Don't walk in the audience. It's already 10 after.
The meeting is being recorded by the board secretary, and there was an executive session prior to the meeting to discuss a personnel matter. As always, I'd like to open by saluting the flag. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move to the approval of the previous minutes. Motion to approve minutes from the April 12th, 2018 meeting of the School Board of Directors of the Quakertown Community School District.
So moved.
Mr. Anderson, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kern. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I'd like to move to the student recognition portion of our meeting. Dr. Harner, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Oh, gosh. Come on. I know there's a lot of enthusiasm, at least for a couple of the issues tonight, and definitely for the celebrations of our young ones. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. A little bit better. Thank you very much for being here tonight. Great to see you all. Tonight, we have the opportunity and privilege to recognize our outstanding math students in elementary school. Every year we have the Math 24 competition. This year it was held at the high school. Just a few weeks ago, our math supervisor, STEM coordinator, is Mr. Greg Lesher. I'm going to ask him to come up and talk about it, the program, the competition, and then we're going to award some certificates to our young folks up here in the front. We're excited. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to acknowledge some of the great things that our kiddos up front are doing. So as Dr. Hunter suggested and noted, every year we have, for the past 4 years, we've had the Math 24 competition. It is a pretty intense event with 48 of our top students from across the district, 8 per building. If you don't know much about Math 24, it is a game that really lends itself to critical thinking, problem solving, number sense, and big picture. Kids are given 4 numbers and they have to compute to 24 as quickly as possible. And if you look at our kiddos up here, most of them can do it within 2 to 3 seconds. They're pretty quick. They will probably beat many of myself, Dr. Hunter, many high school. They are incredible. It's also worth noting that there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to get this event up and running. Outside of all the work that the kids are doing practicing at home, a lot of our teachers who are the coaches or proctors who help set up for the event spend a lot of their time during their prep, lunch, and recess to house the kids within the school to practice. So first, I'd like to acknowledge anybody that participated or supported our kiddos in the audience. Could you please stand? Again, without all the work that has been done on their part, this event would not be possible, and our kids are literally starting to practice as early as September. One of the great parts about this year is that we get the ability to send a number of students to the county-wide competition. Last year we were able to send 12. This year we've increased it by 7, so we're going to have 19 students who attend the county-wide competition in the next 2 weeks. And of course we are confident that they will represent the district well, and hopefully we get some of you guys who can make it to states. All right.
Yep. I'll hand them out if you would call them out.
Sure thing. We don't have all of our students here tonight because they're doubled up in sports, but we'll still acknowledge and call their names out. So what we'll do is we'll start with the individual winners. So we have 1st through 4th place. So in 4th place we had Leah Schwam from Richland. She's not here. She's at a sporting event. 3rd place we have Sean Zhu from POF. Second place we had Taylor Kletzing, who is from POF. She is also at a sporting event. The interesting part this year about the Final Four was that it was the first time we actually had a tie. So Taylor and Sean, some pretty heavy competition there. We had to go to a tiebreaker, which is a cumulative score. And our 1st place winner, who was also known as the calculator, is Sean Egan from POF. Good job, guys. All right. So, in addition to our individual winners, we also have a building or school-wide winner. And despite the fact that POF had 3 of the top 4 students in the top 4, Richland actually came out on top. So we'd like to acknowledge them. And we only have a handful here tonight, once again, because of other doubled up on responsibilities. But we have Leah Schwam. We have Ava Etherton. Come on. Ava. We have Madison Boyd. Evan Mooney. Ursuline Juckno. Abby Boone. Gavin Carroll. Jared Houston. We have Eva Hoyt and Tyler Moyer, who are not here as well.
Mr. President, just a little skip in protocol. Why don't we go with the student report up next for my presentations. Leo.
Thank you, Dr. Harner.
Turn on your mic.
Definitely still a busy time at the high school. Junior prom was 2 weeks ago up at Lehigh. I wasn't in attendance as I'm a senior, but I heard it was fun. I was there last year. It's a great venue. This past weekend, we had mini-thon at the high school, and students raised over $15,000 for pediatric cancer. Also last weekend, where I was, marked the conclusion of the TSA State Conference out at Seven Springs Resort near Pittsburgh, in which I competed. We had many students qualify for the national conference. I will be attending that. That's in late June in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll be going there with another senior. And we actually had a lot of freshmen, and sixth graders did very well. They got a lot of first place trophies, and typically the way TSA is set up, the older students in both middle school and high school are traditionally the winners. So that was very good. So hopefully some of them will be going to nationals as well. Starting this Friday at the high school Cyber Commons, we have the District Art Show, which is going to showcase art from students from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. And also looming not so distantly in the future are AP exams. The first exams begin Monday, May 7th, and they conclude on Friday, May 18th. And lastly, but certainly not least, most seniors have made their college decisions at this point. The national reply date is May 1st, so if students haven't done so, or if seniors haven't done so, they should be making a decision within the next week on where they'll be attending. And all college-bound seniors are encouraged to sport their university's apparel next Tuesday for that occasion. That's all I have.
Thank you. We're going to move on next to the President's report. And what I'd like to do at this point is to throw the mic to Dr. Sedicum, who would like to make a statement.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Anyone who knows me knows I don't usually do written statements, but I thought tonight merited one, so I'll keep it brief and to the facts. Opposition forces have unearthed the fact that I was charged with a bank fraud conviction 26 years ago while a college student at the University of Pennsylvania. Additionally, I possessed 2 driver's licenses for some years and had 2 DUIs in 2005. During the bank fraud proceedings, the court concluded that my criminal responsibility was lessened by mental health issues I suffered from at the time. This resulted in a downward departure verdict due to diminished capacity. The sentence was reduced to 90 days in a federal medical facility with no fines or restitution. Generally, certain convictions make one ineligible to serve public office, but the fact is that all convictions are not disqualifying, and it depends on their nature and the office held. These are judged by individual case when a dispute arises regarding an official's eligibility to serve. For example, the current mayor of York, Pennsylvania has enjoyed multiple re-elections despite being convicted of felony drug trafficking. The courts reviewed the case and determined he was qualified to serve despite the conviction. Fortunately, there's been a progressive shift in public attitude with regards to second chances and redemption. The courts are less inclined to treat all convictions the same. Legal counsel is of the opinion that these convictions are not automatically disqualifying to sit on the board. Now, ironically, it's these stumbles in the road of life over the past quarter of a century, and naturally the love of a good woman, my wife Victoria's in front, that have energized me to continually seek better paths, to be more focused on being an engaged and productive citizen at the end of the day. Documentation of the time, attention, financial support, and enthusiasm that I've poured into the community over the years is more readily available than that of misdeeds. You don't need to dig through microfiche archives to follow the good I've attempted. Interestingly, I never ran for this seat. I was reluctantly steered into it. Over the years, people had suggested I should serve on a school board, and I never expressed any interest in it. But ultimately, 2 phone calls, one from Milford Township Supervisor Tom Cordiff and previous board member Joyce King, pointedly asking me to be on the board, prompted my agreement to serve. I explained I had no idea about anything school board related, and they explained that all I had to do was show up, be smart, and make good decisions for the community. They told me I had a reputation for being thoughtful and community-minded. I agreed to be on the ballot, and I resolved that if I was elected, I would show up and do a good job. Incidentally, the election forms do not ask any background questions other than residency eligibility. And like I told the paper yesterday, they sure should, because then I wouldn't be in this predicament. In any event, I have showed up, and I do a good job. I come to meetings with diligent preparation. I do my homework. I do not engage in partisanship or vitriol. I unapologetically put the concerns of taxpayers, small businesses, and the elderly in the spotlight. Last year opened up with a budget cycle working around a $134 million master plan. I played a pivotal role in redirecting that into a $35 million master plan, which results in every student being in a 21st century facility at the end, with nearly all programs intact. $100 million of cost avoidance, as disruptive as the process has been, is a gigantic fiscal win for this community. Additionally, this year's budget is going to be balanced, and for the first time in the district's history, the $1 million of capital expenditure reserve will be there. That's the public record I'm proud to be part of. I strongly suspect, however, that if my stance and voting record were in line with other factions, that no one would have been compelled to go around digging up this dirt in the first place and then parade it around with bloodlust. But this is politics, so I do not place blame for taking this logical swipe at me. Tonight, there will be a lively discussion with regards to me that will have no bearing on the outcome. Half of the board thinks I should resign, half doesn't. Naturally, there are many opinions from the armchair lawyers in the audience, but this is not a board decision. Nor will this be determined by public comment. This is now a personal matter between me and Doylestown. That being said, the case is currently under review at the district attorney's office. Provided the court finds me eligible to sit, I plan to continue to serve with the same measured thoughtfulness that you've had ample opportunity to observe. So I'll either be at the next board meeting or I won't. In any event, there's nothing to be gained by me staying here tonight on retrial on matters long ago decided. So I'm taking the night off. Thank you. Sorry?
Thank you, Dr. Sedicum. I'd like to make a statement regarding Dr. Sedicum. All the other board members will be given the same opportunity to make a statement if they choose to do so. First, though, I want to stress that this situation is a personal issue that Dr. Sedicum is working through. By law, this is not a school board or administration issue. The school board has no role in determining Dr. Sedicum's eligibility to serve. A brief history, if I may. I was contacted by phone on Tuesday, April 17th by Ryan Wien, the president of the QCEA Teachers Union, regarding information that the union had regarding Dr. Sedicum. Mr. Wien told me during the conversation that, and I quote, "2 of my teachers gave him this information." At my request, Mr. Wien sent me the information regarding Dr. Sedicum via email. The information consisted of what appears to be microfiche copies of newspaper articles from 1993 regarding Dr. Sedicum. Mr. Wien also sent information on Dr. Sedicum from online searches from 1968 to 2011. I immediately directed Dr. Harner to contact our solicitor, which he did. We also sought counsel from the Pennsylvania School Boards Association. We then turned over all the relevant information to the Bucks County DA for his review and decision. Out of an abundance of caution, I decided to end my communications with Mr. Wien until we had a more definitive legal direction from the DA. On Friday, April 20th, I sent an email to all Quakertown School Board members advising them of what I knew regarding Dr. Sedicum's status. This included information received from our solicitor on how to proceed and my recommendation not to discuss this matter until we had more direction. There was a school board retreat this past Monday, April 23rd, that was scheduled back in January of this year. There, Dr. Sedicum addressed the other board members regarding his personal background. There were discussions on the subject, however, we limited those discussions due to the original agenda of the meeting, which needed to be completed. At some point that Saturday, the information regarding Dr. Sedicum appeared in social media, specifically the Quakertown School Board Watch Facebook page. As board president, I chose not to make public statements until we had more legal advice regarding Dr. Sedicum and how it could affect the Quakertown Community School District. Those are the facts surrounding the situation and how we've handled them so far. I have a few more thoughts that I would like to share, and these are my opinions alone and do not represent any official position by the school district or the school board. What this is, plain and simple, is the politics of personal destruction on full display, brought to you by the labor leaders of the QCEA and the PSEA. I want to be clear about this. This is not a reflection on our rank and file teachers. Our teachers in the Quakertown Community School District are our greatest resource. We have awesome teachers. I truly believe that. My issue resides solely with the union leadership of the QCEA and the PSEA. It's clear to me that this began as a fishing expedition designed to dig up dirt on certain school board members to try to influence the makeup of this board. Their goal is to get Dr. Sedicum to resign. This is reprehensible behavior on the part of the labor unions. To go after a person in this manner, especially someone with a disabling medical condition, to me is crossing a line. Someone said to me this week that if you decide to get into politics, you should expect this type of behavior. While I'm not naive to that aspect of politics, keep in mind that this attack did not come from an opposing political party or an opponent in an election. It came from an organization that I had always considered to be a part of the team here at our school district, the QCEA. I liken this to someone in your own family trying to destroy you. Had the union's interest in this information been anything other than using it to try to destroy Dr. Sedicum, they would have approached this differently. Instead, it was presented in a threatening manner. Tell us what we're going to do. Tell us what he's going to do so that we can decide what we're going to do with this information. To me, that's a threat that borders on blackmail. In numerous discussions with Mr. Wien on the subject, my name was mentioned as another board member whose background was being investigated. I have a message for all the rank and file teachers. This is the behavior of your union leadership on full display. Instead of focusing their efforts on helping you, the teachers, to provide a better education for our students, which should be everyone's mission here, they chose to spend time and resources to dig up dirt on selected school board members to further their political agenda. Let your union leadership know if you agree with what they're doing. Keep in mind that silence is acceptance. To our community, many of who will watch this on video, is this the type of behavior you want? I fear for the future of this school district in achieving our mission if what benefits the union takes precedence over that mission. A union-controlled school district prioritizes the needs of the teachers over the needs of the students. Thank you. We're going to move on to the board comment so that the other board members can make their statements.
Well, I didn't have anything prepared. Quite frankly, I'm really appalled that our school board president decided to pin this on our teachers union. And I want to be clear that this is a situation that is difficult. It's a personal situation. There's no doubt in my mind that all of this stuff being brought up in the public eye is upsetting. It's upsetting for me, and I cannot imagine how upsetting it is for Dr. Sedicum and his family. That being said, when someone brings information, when someone finds out information from the public, they have an obligation in my mind from a leadership standpoint in the union to alert our superintendent as well as our school board president, and that is what took place. I'll be honest with you guys, this has been very tense between the board members because we do not agree on this. We absolutely don't, and I'm glad that Mr. Klein did make it clear this opinion is of his own, because I certainly do not agree that people should be fearful of bringing forth information. If you are in a public official's position, you should know that your information is subject to scrutiny. Mine, I can say with certainty, I have no felonies and I have no misdemeanors on my record. So if anyone wants to, do any research on me, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. But again, this blame shift of going after people who report information to our board, to our superintendent, is wrong. We should create an environment of transparency and openness in that we accept information that comes to us and handle it and let the public know that we are investigating it. And that's all. But instead, the method and the strategy in this situation was to further the us versus them between the union and certain school board members. And that is not effective. That is not going to bring us forward, not in a positive manner. So I just want to reassure the people out there within the union that this board, there's a good portion of us who do not agree with the statement that this is somehow your fault for bringing the information forward. And I'm disappointed. I did not know that this was going to be made in the public setting to somehow put the fault on our teachers or our union for bringing the information forward. It's unfortunate, in my opinion. I would like for us to create, going forward, an environment of openness. And so I encourage people to continue to bring information forward, concerns forward, and our responsibility as a board and leadership is to address it and to make sure that we are keeping the community informed while also maintaining a certain level of discretion to protect the board member involved. And unfortunately, I don't agree with the way this entire situation was handled. I'm not sure what else to say.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Would anyone else like to make a statement?
Okay, I'm the attorney on the board, so I believe we should wait for the DA to give us an opinion on eligibility for Dr. Sedicum to serve. But I do want to say that there's more than just a 24-year-old felony conviction involved here. There's a history of convictions that concern me. And I am one of the people that thought Dr. Sedicum should resign because of that history. If I had that history, I would have lost my law license to practice law. And I think it raises issues of an ability to serve an elected position. So those are my personal feelings. But as an attorney, I think we do need to wait till we get an opinion from the district attorney's office. However, I do and would like this on the record, but Dr. Sedicum has left, that if that opinion comes down and it's not favorable to him and they say he was ineligible to run with this history of multiple convictions, that he not appeal it, that we not litigate this, that we not have to wait for a judge's decision. I'm a litigator. I know how expensive that is. I do not want this school district or the board to go through that. And so those are my opinions. I would prefer to see Dr. Sedicum resign, not to go through all this, but if he will not, as the lawyer in me, I think we need to wait till we get the DA decision, because as a board, we can't do anything more than that.
Thank you, Ms. Weed. Mr. Anderson?
I want to state that Ms. Weed is correct in her opinion that we should wait for the district attorney. That's probably the most blatantly obvious thing about this whole situation. The information was passed on to the district attorney. He has all that information. As proper, he will decide whether or not Mr. Sedicum is qualified to hold the position he holds through the election. To correct Mrs. Weed, Dr. Sedicum already expressed to the board, but I'm not sure if I'm overstepping my bounds here, but he made it quite clear to us that should the decision be disfavorable, unfavorable, should the district attorney determine that he should step down, he will. As I understand it, there's no intention of Dr. Sedicum to dispute the findings of the district attorney, but let's all agree that that's the proper course of this action. I see a lot of people out there. I've heard two board members, well, I'm sorry, Ms. Weed has already stated she believes he should resign. I don't believe Ms. Mitchell made any comment that way, one or the other. There may be members of the audience here who may hold that position. I would ask that they do the same thing. They sit and not express any opinion to that regard, because the district attorney has that information in front of them. Secondly, Dr. Sedicum was correct in saying that this is not a disqualifier. I am not about to say that Dr. Sedicum's actions are not egregious and questionable, but there's an election that happened last year. This board made a decision to take a course of action, and the community did not enjoy our decision, and they showed it at the ballot box. If you recall, there's 4 new board members up here. I would say that if you feel Dr. Sedicum should no longer be a board member, or that anybody else up here should no longer be a board member, somebody in the audience at the end of the last meeting stood up and walked out and said, "Hey, when's the election?" The election's November 4th, 2019. Put it on your calendar. Show up. Make your opinion heard there. This is not the place for anybody to stand up and tell Dr. Sedicum to resign because you feel like it. That's the only comment I have about this.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Anderson?
Right. As most of you know, I am reluctant to speak out at board members, and something I rarely do. First of all, Dr. Sedicum is far and away better than any of us in his grasp of the school district's financial issues. If he were to depart the board, that would be a terrible thing for the citizens of this district. The next issue, in my opinion, is who do the people of this community want controlling the school district? It is clear to me that the teachers want to control the board. PSEA has contributed $2,000 to the campaign of our newest board members. If Dr. Sedicum departs, then Chris Spear, who has contributed $1,000 to our new board members' campaigns, would hopefully be able to ascend to Dr. Sedicum's seat. While this internecine warfare continues, 40% of QCSD students are below grade level. When Dr. Harner came to Quakertown, only 19% of QHS seniors were ready for college. That percentage is now 36%, a nearly 100% increase. All of you teachers who are against us, how do you feel about those statistics? I am the only person in this room probably who currently teaches recent QHS graduates, and I can tell you from firsthand experience they are largely uneducated. And when I talk to current QHS seniors, I see the same things. So do we as a community want the teachers in charge and roll back the changes, or do we keep moving on to the academic goals the board set a few years ago? I got on this board for one reason, to fix this district academically. It is a long process and I am impatient. But that should be the focus of this board and not the fighting amongst ourselves to see who should or should not be a member of this board.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Mercucci?
So, can everybody hear me? I've gotten told like nobody can hear me. So, I do want to address one thing that I'm again shocked at walking in, is that we were going to have this discussion up here. And to Mr. Klein, we spoke yesterday. You made no mention you were going to give us all the microphone to prepare a speech, because when we left Monday, our presentation to everybody was we were going to let the facts play out, and we haven't. We've got up here and stated our opinions to the entire community, which I find to be against what we committed to behind closed doors as an organization and as a board. And if we're supposed to be unified, this is not the way to unify people. Mr. Anderson, you were a teacher in this school district.
I know.
You were a teacher in this school district.
Yes.
To hammer teachers is absolutely bizarre. I can't figure it out. First off, I'm here for the facts. And that's what we talked about doing as a board, going by the facts, not putting our opinions in, not saying what we felt was right or wrong. And we've asked, and what I've asked behind closed doors is to figure out as a board how to unify not only the teachers, but the community and the board. And this is not the way to do it, folks. This is not the way we're going to move forward. We stand no chance of getting anything accomplished. For Dr. Seneca to say half of this board wanted him to resign, name half of the people today who wanted him to resign on this board. Give me half. Who? We have one. I think Jenny Wee was the only one that actually spoke up.
Yeah, I think I am the only one who felt
the other
he should
folks
resign.
wanted the facts to play out. But again, it's a play on words. It's to divide the board. And that's what people like to do. It's unbelievable. We are going to make no progress if we keep this up.
Thank you, Mr. Mercucci. Mr. Akmanowicz?
I am appalled that you had to throw up into the audience that, somehow we have an invested interest in this because we took money. I'm absolutely appalled that because of our support from the union, you feel that it is in some way, affecting our judgment when we've sat back and agreed to play this out as we've all discussed and requested. Not a single time has any of us who took money from the teachers' union made a public statement or requested or made some show of this unfortunate ordeal. And for the record, all the charges that he has, misdemeanors, felonies, my personal opinion is I believe that he should resign.
Thank you, Mr. Akmanowicz. Mr. Kern?
It's hard not to say this is fun. But yeah, the dirt's flying, the emotions are high. In my opinion, it's an unfortunate thing that came to light, and it's probably pretty obvious why it came to light. But for me, it's past history. Dr. Sedekim, who's not here to hear me say this to him, but I would. He's come a long way, obviously, from those teenage, early 20 days. A little bit not unlike my father, who ran away from home, high school dropout, got arrested, joined the Navy, ended up being a teacher, professor at Ohio State, ultimately dean at Kutztown. And the smartest man I've ever met in my life, I might say. And so I have a soft spot, I have to say. And in case you haven't figured this out, being up here is not actually a lot of fun and really rewarding. It's relatively a thankless position, and to get pummeled by folks week in and week out makes it pretty hard to, like, when's the election? When's that date? Yes. Nice. He did his time. He served time in a federal medical. He was bipolar. I knew some people that were bipolar, and one's not even with us anymore. If none of this was brought to light, I do not think people would be here calling for his ousting. I do not think people would. He's been a selfless servant, doing way more than. Frankly, I'm kind of shocked at how much he's serving us, and how well he's doing it. So, my opinion is this is an unfortunate set of events. It's really, as you can imagine, it's really hard to get people to run for office. This ain't helping. Who would ever want to run for this office, other than maybe to think you gain power or something like that? But there's no power here.
People who care about education.
Yeah, okay. But the smear campaign has left its mark on me. It's a terrible thing to do to somebody, to impugn their character. That's just horrific. It says more about the people doing it than it does about the man and his past. But yeah, it's left a super bad taste in my mouth, this whole thing. And it has nothing to do with about the kids. Nothing. And we're just wasting time. It's hard enough to get anything done here. This is a horrible. Part of the reason I ran for office was, gee, I wonder how this public school system worked, that, we sent our kids here to high school. And, I went to high school. And I kind of wonder, what's the inner workings of a public, I like to call them government schools. What's it like? Believe me, it ain't pretty. It's hard to get anything done, probably purposely. It favors status quo over change. And this kind of waste of time for political gain, or for whatever reason, even if it's for no political gain, it's a waste of time. It didn't have to happen. And all we're doing is delaying actually trying to do something positive for the children. So that's my piece.
Let me quick set the record straight. I apologize for those out there in the audience who were quick, grabbed their phone and looked. The election is November 5th, 2019, next year. I don't want to be accused of misleading the public. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. We're going to move now on to the first general public comment portion of the meeting. We have a very large agenda today that we need to plow through. However, I want to make sure that everybody who wants to make a comment is able to do so. However, we're going to limit the first public comment to 45 minutes. We do have people that have signed up. We're going to ask that you please stay to 5 minutes or less. If we find that there's too many people that are going long, I'll stop the public comment and that'll be it. So please keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. And Madam Secretary, who's the first person we have signed up for public comment?
Lynn McCandler.
Please step up to the podium, sir.
We can't hear you.
We have a microphone. Won't be able to watch the clock from here.
There'll be one up there.
It'll be up on the screen, sir.
We can let you know when there's a minute.
You can
There
see
you
the
go.
timer tick.
All right. So the walkout by the children in the schools, I'd like to know, how was that communicated to the school that there was going to be that walkout, that 17 minutes several weeks ago? Can anyone tell me?
Do you want to answer that,
Please.
Dr. Hunter?
How was it communicated to the school?
Yes.
Initially, I communicated to all of the parents through a email.
But how did you find out about it? This was nationwide, right?
Yes, sir.
How did you find out?
Students come to you.
The students came to me, sir.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right. And was this decided then by the teachers or the school board?
This was definitely not decided by the teachers. It was decided by the students.
It was voted at the school board?
No, sir.
No? Okay.
I did discuss it at a board meeting, but it was not a vote.
So Was everybody more or less in favor?
There wasn't a vote, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, to have children make a political statement like that is, I think, somewhat wrong. And I'm cutting short what I had to say here. Memorial Day is May 28th, and the parade starts at 9 o'clock in Quakertown, and at 10 o'clock the services start in the park. And I go to the services, and I know all the thousands and thousands of people that live in this Quakertown school district. If it wasn't for the band and for the veterans, our park would be pretty much empty there. And since these children who were permitted to walk out and make this political statement had the right to do that, I thought it would be a great idea if the school board would encourage all the students to go there and to listen when they read the name. They start with World War I, and they read the dead serviceman's name, and then they toll the bell. And then they read the next name, and they toll the bell. And I don't know what people think, but I'm going to tell you what I think, because I hear some of the names, and those names are in our community yet. And I feel, okay, that somebody in that family lost their life, but then there's a lot of other names that I never heard before. And I know I can't know all the names. However, I often wonder, that name that they just said, was that the end of that family name? Did that man not have a son to pass his family name on to? And when I hear that, when I think that, it makes me very sad. And I was very sad the day I went down Park Avenue and I saw 2 dump trucks blocking the street off, and I saw the students returning to the school. So I would ask that the school board speak to the teachers and ask all the students, at least this year, to go and listen to the names that gave that right, well, with the permission of their teachers anyway, to exercise that freedom. That's within 5, right?
Good, sir, for a second, if I may, Mr. President. First off, it is indeed a privilege of mine to work with one of those children of one who gave his life. Frank Parker, he's in the audience right now. He's an awesome teacher, and he's one of ours. So when you talk about teachers, he is one of ours whose dad gave his life in Vietnam. And Frank, is this 1967? Yes. It's awesome. Another thing, your superintendent, the person who authorized it or supported it, and didn't authorize it because students were going to do it, and I wanted them to learn about the First Amendment. I spent 20 years active duty in the Army, sir, and I spent 20 years to defend the Constitution. And so it was my respect of the Constitution to make sure these students learned about that. And our teachers were awesome in what they did. When our students walked out of their classroom to the park and on the way back, they didn't say a thing. They were silent from the classroom out there. It was an incredibly special moment. And then finally, on Memorial Day, when we're going to call out those names, I've been honored to be the guest speaker this year. So I'll be giving those remarks, and I'll talk a little bit about the park or the walkout and how that connects to the tremendous sacrifices that our community members who gave their life and many others, and also both of my children. I only have 2 kids. Both of them are in the Army right now, and my son's going to be going off to combat here real soon. So I understand that. Thank you, sir.
Well, that political statement was to take away guns.
No.
And to be 21 years of age.
That's not true.
Okay, sir.
It was.
It wasn't, sir.
Sir, our students made no comments of any kind during the event. They made comments before, after, or during the event. I will say this, I applaud your request. I would ask Dr. Harner to simply include in his blog the appropriate comment about Memorial Day when the time comes, but I believe you do yourself a disservice in one fact when you ask us to focus on the community children rather than realizing that we are the Quakertown Community School District, and that sentiment should be applied to the entire community in its entirety. So I appreciate what you said. I appreciate you asking the students to step up, but I would ask, you pointed out that the crowd is very sparse. Not every family has children. We need to encourage our community in general to attend this event, sir.
I can't think of a way of doing that. I thought through the students would be the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Paul Stepanoff?
Thank you. Paul Stepanoff with Haycock Township. I'd like to briefly address two separate issues that actually turn out to be related. The first is Quakertown's budget process, and specifically the vote on furloughs. And the second is the recent union thuggery that took place. We are now 3/4 of the way through the budget cycle and have not heard or seen a single proposal regarding alternative proposals to avert furloughs. Ms. Mitchell, when you were on this side of the microphone, you had all the answers. You knew where $3 million in the budget was. You knew that you told us that PESers and teacher benefits were not an issue. You told us that closing buildings was not necessary. You had all the answers. Can you name one specific proposal you put on the table?
How about you not spend $4 million on practice turf fields? How about that?
And you said, yep. And you even said
you put us in a mess of a situation by all the spending that you did.
And you said that the sports fields for the kids are evil, and so is the dance studio is evil. That's right, you said that. But what is your single proposal to avert teacher furloughs? Not one. Not one.
That's because you've been to all of our finance meetings. Oh, right, you haven't been to one.
You haven't put a single proposal on the table, Ms. Mitchell. Can you name one? I'm listening. You want to be snarky? I can be snarky too.
Why don't you just sit down?
And Mr. Achmanowitz, can you name one proposal you brought to the
Mr. Stepanoff, please don't address individual board members.
Well, it's clear that not any of the board members that brought a single proposal to the table to avert furloughs. And some board members we should applaud for even showing up. But one of the questions that was asked last meeting was why we didn't consider, or why you aren't considering early retirement benefits. I hope that question is now answered, that it actually costs the district more money. But one of the things that wasn't answered was why the teachers union actually walked away from those discussions. Right now there's a $250,000 line item, legacy line item in your budget that's basically 3 teachers because of the previous furlough agreement. So it's clear that it costs money. But why did the teachers union walk away? Because when you give something up, you ask for something back. And what did the school board ask for? We asked for 1 hour a month. 1 hour a month. And the teachers union refused. Getting back to the budget. There hasn't been a single...
Ladies and gentlemen, please refrain from making comment when somebody is at the podium. Thank you.
There hasn't been a single proposal from the new board members to address the furloughs. Not a single one. The only proposals they have is to say no. Mark my words, you can't lead from behind. No is not a vision nor a plan. Now it's crunch time. Furlough notices have actually gone out. This is serious. Where are all the answers? None. The teachers could also have averted a furlough by volunteering 1.5% of their salary. Considering their average teacher salary is $92,000 a year, which puts them in the top 3% of all wage earners in this area. Giving up 1.5% for the top 3% doesn't sound like a big thing. So if you really want to put blame on why there was a vote to furlough the teachers, it's clear where that blame lies. Now let's turn our attention to the egregious acts of the teachers union. Rather than have an intellectual discussion or blame who was really at fault for the furloughs, the union decided to personally attack. I hope all board members and teachers denounce the personal attacks by the union leadership. And if not, I trust all board members would open up their past to be publicly examined. In fact, if the union believes it is relevant for the public to know today what a board member did 25 years ago as a disabled student, they surely must agree that it is far more important for parents to know how individual teachers are actually performing with our children. Ironically, the union leadership lives in a glass house. And everybody knows that when you live in a glass house, you shouldn't throw stones. But since they've now shattered their own glass house, we should know that the union president is actually one of the worst performing teachers in this district.
Shame on you.
Yeah? I think it's relevant for parents to know that. Less than 1/4 of his students show adequate yearly progress. The third grade in Quakertown Elementary is the worst performing third grade in the district.
Mr. Stepanoff, please wrap up.
All right, I will. So to our student representatives, I hope that tomorrow you ask the teachers about their hypocrisy, teaching anti-bullying during the day and then at night being bullies themselves. So thank you very much for your time.
That's right.
Lisa Flummer.
So like I said before, guys. So here's the deal with regard to the finances. We have financial meetings all the time, and when I actually ran, I said I wouldn't have all the answers. I don't think any of us have the answers. I think we work collectively to find the answers. We've asked the union to give us recommendations. The administration has done a noble job of trying to find extra dollars in the budget. So I think it's collectively a group effort. And that's the difference between really what this board did and the last board is I think we have good dialogue over the finances, and there's work to be done. We've said that all along, and if we're dealing with spending that happened before we got here, so we're going to have to figure that out. But we're left with massive debt, guys, and we'll have to keep working on it. So.
Can I just clear up
Hey,
one
guys,
thing?
we're in public comment. Can we please wait?
I just want to just clear up, when people throw out the turf field, $3 million, $4 million, it'd be like saying when we built the $77 million high school renovation, we spent $77 million. It's like the turf field is $80,000 a year. It's not like we wrote a check for $3.5 million. Same thing with the... Correct. It's the same thing with all capital expenses. It's a different pot of money, and it's false to throw that out there as if we spent $3.5 million instead of putting it to teachers or some other thing. So just want you to know it's not a line item like it's made out to be when someone just says $3.5 million turf field. It's an $80,000 a year, some kind of an expense that's amortized. So
Okay,
just so you know, it's not just straight up money.
Continue with public comment.
Lisa Flummer.
Lisa Flummer from Richland Township. I have never been brought to tears publicly in my life. Never. This is disgraceful. I want to apologize to the board members. Even though I may not agree with you, that doesn't mean that I need to publicly humiliate you. My reason for coming tonight. I want to read something that I posted on one of the websites. It's on Facebook, but it's on one of the websites, and I'll try to get through this as fastly as possible. It says, to our board members and Dr. Harner, I'm coming to you as a very, very concerned parent with 3 kids in QCSD. Sorry. I posted on Facebook Quakertown Community Education on April 24th, 9:53 p.m. And I quote myself, I am so not happy to hear closing of schools, which I agreed with at the time. Now Strayer is packed to the gills with over 900 students And you're talking about our comfort, reassurance that our kids are in good hands. With one nurse taking care of 900 students, you're out of your mind. You will burn her out. Are you thinking clearly? Now, I want to jump and then I'll come back. This is something that I think everybody needs to understand. I have 3 kids in the school district, along with everybody else here. Your kids are your pride and joy? Yes, they are. My kids are my pride and joy. Your boys are your pride and joy. Are you going to let somebody tell you that their health is not important to you? I don't think so. And that's what would happen if you get rid of Miss Pat. That's exactly what happened. We have too many kids in our district that have too many medical issues. You're talking diabetes, epilepsy, asthmatics, panic disorders, autism, cystic fibrosis, and I'm sure there's others out there. You're telling me that it's okay to take away one nurse who's only there half a day, and I understand that. She's a wonderful nurse. She comes to us. She chose to come to us and say, look, I love your kids. I have a history in nursing. I can take my knowledge and give it to all of you. And you're going to take that away from me? You're taking my comfort away. You're taking my reassurance away. I just went back to work this year. I love what I do. I only work part-time. But if this happens and we lose our nurse at Stryer, I'm going to have to quit working again. You're going to put me back in the hole. Just my family. That's not including anybody else out here that may be in the same position that I'm in. And I'm looking at you because I know that when you and I talk, we understand. But I mean this for everyone. No disrespect, nothing. Please don't take it that way. You're taking away our reassurance. You're taking away our comfort. You're thinking more about money than you are their safety and ours. You're putting our jobs as parents in jeopardy because now we have to look at and say, okay, now I got to go home because of my kid's sick, where I didn't have to worry about it as much when we had 2 nurses. 900 kids. Can any of you take care of 900 kids in one day? And if there's a medical emergency and that nurse is out that day, what are you going to do? I'm angry about this. I really am. I understand the furloughs. Do I agree? No, I don't. I support the teachers. I do. Without you, my kids wouldn't be learning. Do I agree with everything? No, but you give your heart. That's all I care about. These kids need to know they are first. You're not making them first priority. You're making money first priority. Closing schools, I don't agree with 100%. I understand. This is very hard for us as parents to know that our kids are not going to be in safe hands. 2 other things real quick and then I'm out of here. What's more important, reading or saving our teachers? We have stuff out there. Why spend that money for reading for K through 5 for our elementary schools, and we've already closed 2. We'll be closing the second one. I don't want my kids losing some of their favorite teachers. I know one of my favorite teachers, if I understand correctly, is retiring this year.
Ms. Flommer, please wrap up.
Okay. But that is not something that I feel is a priority for our kids. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Melissa Kelly.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Kelly. I'm a resident of Richland Township. I'm a nurse at Quakertown High School, and I'm a parent of 2 elementary age students at Tohickon Valley. Thank you for allowing me to talk to you tonight. I'd like to use my time to speak both as a nurse and as a parent about the proposed staffing cuts. The proposed staffing cuts of teachers, a guidance counselor, and a nurse are very concerning to me. These are our district's precious human resources. These are people who make a difference in the lives of children every single day. As a nurse for the district, I often feel that most people think we are solely in the business of Band-Aids and ice packs. This really couldn't be further from the truth. As nurses working in a school setting, we provide direct patient care to students, staff, and even visitors who are sick or injured within our buildings. We assist students in managing chronic health conditions such as asthma, diabetes, seizures, severe food allergies, cancer, migraines, and a whole list of other concerns you would probably not be familiar with, but doesn't make them any less important. We are providing counseling to students with anxiety, depression, or who are just having a really bad day when guidance is booked solid and unfortunately can't see them. We contact other healthcare providers to provide cohesive medical care while students are in school. We talk to parents about their children regarding illness and injury, but also about concerns we have noted or improvements we are seeing. We measure height and weight and provide vision screenings for every student in the district. We provide hearing and scoliosis screenings to specific grade levels. We manage immunizations for all students within the district. This not only protects the herd immunity of the children in school, but of our entire community. We dispense medications to students with chronic health conditions and as-needed medications such as Tylenol, ibuprofen, or Tums to manage minor discomforts and keep students in class and learning. We provide snacks to students who are hungry. We do all this and so much more. When you furlough one of the 12 of us, you are asking us to do the same amount of work with less resources. I wonder, as both a nurse and a parent, what the cost of this may be. You see, my own child has a life-threatening food allergy, and I count on every district employee who comes into contact with her to keep her safe. If the numbers in our buildings grow, but the number of nurses available shrinks, what will happen if she has an accidental exposure at school? Many people don't realize that there is a window of opportunity to give epinephrine during anaphylaxis, and if you miss this window, the likely outcome is death. The most common cause of death related to food allergies is delayed epinephrine administration. Every day, I put my daughter's life into the hands of QCSD. Reducing the number of nurses could delay my daughter's treatment and have grave consequences. My daughter is not alone in her need for timely recognition and treatment of a health condition. There are students throughout our district who are counting on us to keep them safe and healthy while they're in our buildings. They may have an allergy like my daughter, a seizure disorder, a cardiac issue, or countless other health problems. So again, I ask, at what cost do we furlough one of the 12 people who are trained to recognize a health emergency and respond appropriately? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, and others who are going to speak about the guidance counselor, the nurse, and a couple of the furloughs, we'll have a presentation, so please stick around, that will present to the board an opportunity for us to retain, at this particular juncture, 4 of our staff members that have been furloughed. That includes a guidance counselor and a nurse. So we'll be presenting that during superintendent's report.
Thank you, sir.
Suzanne Hendricks.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Hendricks. I'm a nurse also and a taxpayer in Milford Township. I'm very concerned. Years ago, you outsourced our custodians. Now you're moving to with our teachers. I have addressed the board previous several years ago and went on deaf ears. I'm approaching the board again, hopefully that you can look at administration. I graduated from Quakertown High School, and I see the amount of administration that you have. Alone in your HR, because I am an administrator, you have 5 people. If I functioned with 5 people in my HR, we would go under. So not just looking at your teachers, you're outsourcing nurses who I know in this school district use special needs that are on ventilators, and trach children in our school district. So you're outsourcing a nurse and counselors where our students have increased mental health issues. You should look at more of hiring more counselors. And I hear what you had to say. That's very nice that we're going to have a presentation afterwards. And I hope in the budget that we also look at decreasing your administration. Because as a administrator myself, that's where we look at first. So how we do it, because we are nurses and I'm an administrator, we look at direct care. So as your teachers, who's doing the direct care? The people who are teaching. So your teachers are the teachers. You have teachers that are not doing direct teaching, that's considered administration. So when you're really looking at a budget, you look at who is in administration, and that includes your teachers who actually are not doing direct teaching. So they are no longer considered a teacher. That moves them up to administration. We do the same way in nursing. So that's my point number 1. Point number 2, I hear everybody talking about our board member. I sit on the largest board in the state of Pennsylvania. I sit on the State Board of Nursing. Number 1, board members have to take an ethics code, and you have to sign it. I'm not here to judge the man. I understand he has mental health. As a nurse, my heart goes out to him and his family. But I do want to say he is a licensed physician, just like I am a licensed nurse in the state of Pennsylvania. So guess what? When you're a licensed professional, just like she's a lawyer, you have to check the box when you get a license, as do teachers, were you convicted? Just like board members, there are, when I sit on the State Board of Nursing, I have to do an ethics, I have to do finance, everything has to be brought forward. So I understand you guys are in a tight thing, but somewhere someone has to take responsibility for their actions, because in that paper that you sign, you do sign a paper saying for ethics.
Just so you know, I'm sorry to interrupt, but he made all that aware when he does his licensing and everything. They all know about that. He wasn't dishonest. He did not withhold any information. There's no such form that you're describing for running for office here.
No, but as a physician, there is.
Yes, and he went through all of that every time. It dredges it up in his past, and he goes through it.
And I understand that.
So I just want to make sure that you didn't know that because I just told you.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I did
Let's-
know that because I have to sign the same forms.
Let's let Ms. Hendricks finish her comment.
So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that there is forms that you do have to sign and you do have to bring, because everybody's saying no one knows. Yes, there is forms that you have to fill out, and you have to state that in your, when you do apply for any license. So that's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. The weirdest thing is, in all honesty, so I'm a nurse, so we fill out the same forms, and we actually, I mean, you if you disclose it on those forms.
And it's called ARD because
Yeah,
I sit
so
on the board, and I sit on
for the nursing store. I got
several subcommittees, and it's called ARD. So if he had ARD, it can be resolved. But there were so many things thrown out here. I was just trying to explain to everybody that there is things.
Yeah, and the most bizarre thing is that it's not required to be here. right? There's no background check. I mean, we talked about it today as a group.
There isn't a background check for
there's
you.
nothing for us.
And
It's the
I
most
sit on the
crazy
largest
thing.
board in the state, and I know there's not a background check, but there is an ethics form.
Right, and so
We're hoping to change that.
So
though.
I mean, we're gonna. I mean, we'll look at that and see if we can come up with an idea. But you're 100% right. I mean, we have to go through FBI background checks and everything else.
And for everybody to be in the school.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for my comments.
Can I make one quick comment in response, just real quick?
Okay.
One of your statements I just wish to address because it's come up a lot, and I don't mean to be blunt, but I'm tired of hearing it. We need to reduce administration. This is right out of our QFA, or FAQ, I should say, from last year. If all the options are implemented, 4 administrative positions, 36.8 teaching positions, and 9 staff positions will be eliminated over the 2-year period. That represents a 14.8% reduction in administration, 9.8% reduction in teachers, and 6.25% reduction in support staff. We've eliminated 4 administration positions already.
Okay, well, my other question, though, is when I graduated, you did graduated from Quakertown High School. And the fact that we're not, what was the comment? We're uneducatable. Well, I hold several degrees. But anyway, what my comment is, looking at when I graduated in 1979, the amount of administration and principals you had from when I graduated to now, and I think if I recall, the amount is only 200 more children in that school district. So we went from, and I'm trying to remember how many, we had 1 principal and 2 vice principals. And I think Mr. Anderson would, and I know we're not supposed to, but I think if I'm correct.
Right. If you look in the yearbook, there was about 6 administrators in the central office.
Yeah, so we are much higher now. And that's the point that I'm making. So that we need to look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Lewis.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Lewis. I'm 12 and I go to the 6th grade center. And I'm here to talk about the teachers that are being furloughed or demoted. I wrote a persuasive. So stop getting rid of our teachers. One reason you need to stop getting rid of our teachers is because most of the time the teachers are furloughed or demoted because they're the youngest in the department. If you think about it, why demote or furlough teachers just because they're the youngest? I think before you demote or furlough a teacher, you should actually come through our schools and take the time to see how teachers teach and who does their job better, because it shouldn't depend on the years of service. Don't you think the responsible thing to do would be to observe the teachers and see how well they do their job? How often is a teacher actually observed doing their job? How can you consider demoting or furloughing anyone if you haven't taken the time to see how well they perform their job? Because you're not spending the time to observe teachers in their classes. You are risking losing teachers that are excellent like Miss Franks. I came from Silicon Valley Elementary School, and my first year of ever taking Spanish was 5th grade. In 5th grade, my Spanish teacher was not that helpful in learning anything new, so I started to hate having to take Spanish. When I found out that I would have to take Spanish in 6th grade, I was expecting to absolutely hate it. But when I met Miss Franks, my whole perspective changed. She taught us all so much and made learning a new language and a topic you didn't want to learn at all the best class you had. If it weren't for Miss Franks, I wouldn't know as much as I do now. She has great teaching methods and is a teacher that everyone thinks is really cool and awesome. I love that we're not always having to sit down at our desks and waiting to write stuff down. Instead, we're interacting, having conversations with our peers in Spanish and actually learning more. Thanks to Miss Franks, if I needed, I could have a conversation with somebody that speaks Spanish. Miss Franks has changed my whole perspective on learning Spanish. She has made it fun in ways I've never seen a teacher make learning fun. This is why it's important to be going to the schools and sitting in the classes, seeing how the teachers are teaching and handling their classes. Because years of service should definitely not depend on who gets furloughed or demoted. And by the way, do we have to do that at all? Why can't we stop buying land that we're not going to use? why are we wasting the community's tax money and not building on land that we bought? And yes, kids do understand what's going on because more schools are getting closed. And why are we going to waste our money renovating elementary schools when we already bought land that we aren't even building on? Plus, our schools are getting even more crowded, and it gets unsafe when there are so many kids in the hallways. At the 6th grade center, everyone gets to go to their locker after third period, and it's very crowded. The classrooms are crowded, and we have around 28 kids per class, and there's usually only one teacher with us. How are you going to cram more kids into these schools? I would sincerely request you to observe these schools and classrooms and actually take the time to see these teachers in action. And I don't mean just 5 minutes or just a walkthrough. Actually see for yourself how many kids are stuffed into rooms and how much learning can take place in the environments so that you don't do any more damage. Stop hurting us like we're cattle. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we have 10 minutes left of the 45, so would anybody like to make comment? Mr. Spears, you had your hand up first.
Chris Spear, Milford Township. Thank God Mr. Anderson finally said that, because I only had a high school education and I had it in Quakertown. He was my teacher, so I'm one of the lucky ones that has actually benefited from my high school education. So I'm so glad I didn't have to go to college now. I spent my 20s and 30s touring around in a band. Sometimes I do wish I went to college, but I do feel that I did get a good education here in Quakertown, and I would like to continue that. It's not really why I came up. That just came up tonight. Dr. Sedicum, I wanted to speak for him. I mean, a lot has been said, and you know, I personally haven't been saying anything derogatory toward him, but I have issues with the system and how it works. I would actually ask everybody in this room to look up everything they can on every one of these school board members. The law should be that they have to disclose anything, and if any issues come up, these distractions then wouldn't happen. This should be done before. All of these school board members should be subjected to the same background checks that teachers get, that parents tomorrow I'm going to Washington, D.C. with the 8th graders. As a parent thing, I had to give fingerprints, do all that stuff. None of them, they don't even have to answer a question whether they've committed a felony or not. And they have access to the schools. Right. That law, and I don't know if the solicitor here has any control over changing that, or...
Well, very little.
Well, if they vote on maybe a new policy that could include that...
It's a legislature issue. So
okay.
Mr. Statz and the senator are probably where you need to start. And I think you're right. It's crazy.
And that's really what I want to say. I don't want to stomp on Dr. Sedicum. I mean, I disagree with a lot of what he says up here. He's my foot doctor, though. I like talking. I like talking to him. He's a funny guy. He's a nice guy. You know, he's probably going to, come at my feet now. I don't know. But, you know, I just want... I want everything to be fair here. I think everybody should be checked. And you know what? I invite... Even though I shouldn't, I invite you all to look up everything on any of them. And if dirt's found on any of them, the same process should go through. The DA should investigate it. And that's all I really wanted to say.
Chris, and I volunteered, I'll help whoever wants to do the background check. Maybe I can make it easier. So if there's somebody that wants to look into my background, I'd be happy to, get together and figure out how we could do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the Dr. Sedicum thing, that as far as when it was brought out, I didn't have to dig. It wasn't something that was really hidden. It was a simple Google search showed it up. So it wasn't microfilm that somebody went into archives and dug through or anything like that. Really, all you had to do was put his name into Google and it comes up. So, I mean, but I believe that everybody should have the same scrutiny that parent volunteers do.
And Chris, I agree with you about the background checks. I might be the only board member here who got my clearances. Because I'm just asking the question. I'm just saying, but, you know, and that was because you said that we have access to the schools. Frankly, no, we don't. We can't just walk into any school and say, oh, by the way, I'm a school board member, let me look around your school.
No,
But-
but you
but-
do have access to the schools. You've gone on tours to the schools.
Escorted by somebody who has access. We do not tour alone. We are escorted. Any citizen can be escorted.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, we don't have special privileges because we're a school board member.
Well, if the law states that, and I believe it was I don't have the direct wording, but between the law, the law and the Constitution, which was Article 2, Section 7, and it was all written out in a lot of legal words, and then it was confirmed by different court cases, basically says anybody convicted of a felony is ineligible to run.
Well, it says infamous crime.
Infamous crimes,
felony,
but that's where the court
And the district attorney
And misdemeanors that are infamous.
and the district attorney, as should be, will make that determination. Nobody here is qualified. Even Ms. Weed, frankly, is not qualified to make this decision.
Any judgment on that? So yeah, don't go down that road. I'm not saying we should do that. What I'm saying though is that, and I kind of got off subject here, but if that's what the Constitution and that's what the law says, that question should be asked directly on any kind of questionnaire. Maybe you don't have to get background checks, but that should come up before somebody's put onto the school board. So these distractions won't happen, because that one newspaper article and a few Facebook posts is just the tip of that iceberg, probably. Now that it's been brought out in public here, there's a few reporters in here probably going to write about it. It's only going to be a matter of time before our friend Janice Armstrong from the Philadelphia Inquirer writes a really nice article, probably. So, you know...
Please wrap up, Mr. Spears.
Yes, okay. I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, the person holding their hand up with a piece of paper in it, I can't see who you are. Mr. Wien.
Ryan Wien, QCA president. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. It is true that last year I had the worst scores in 3rd grade in Quakertown School District. I own that. As a good teacher, I reflected on that, made changes to my teaching practice, reached out to members of our Office of Teaching and Learning to improve myself. But I bet if you look at my averages, which the district loves to look at averages with data, you'd find that I'm definitely not, or haven't, been scoring that low in my 12 years of teaching here. In fact, I was part of a team just a year before I had the lowest scores at Quakertown Elementary, where we have Title I students, to have some of the highest growth in the state for Title I students, and I was part of that team. When I was in 5th grade teaching, I had some of the highest scores in the district at Quakertown Elementary School. So I just want to put that on the record. In regards to the situation with Dr. Sedicum, I'm not going to discuss anything about Dr. Sedicum's situation. I've said in conversations with Mr. Klein and Dr. Harner and Ms. Edwards when she visited my classroom recently, that I don't think this was a union issue to get involved with. Mr. Klein mentioned tonight that 2 teachers had reached out to me with information, and that is accurate. But when I told him that, I also told him that I did not know where the information came from to those 2 teachers. Those 2 teachers did not tell me that they had found that information. So to this day, I do not even know where that information originally came from. It could have came from a taxpayer, community member, someone outside the district that gave it to those teachers. I am not aware of where it came from. However, I don't see how as a leader or a public teacher that I could sit on information that's potentially illegal. And I question any board member here who would say that they would have sat on that information and not let somebody know about it. Because I was actually worried that this would happen, that this would turn into an anti-venom or anti-union protest here, I had reached out to the state PSCA Association, State Union Association, so I could have guidance on what the best thing was to do, because I don't normally get myself in this type of situation where I'm finding this information. So it was their recommendation that I reach out to Mr. Klein, which I did immediately after I got off the phone call, and then called Dr. Harner, which I didn't have to do, but I did anyways. And I mentioned to both of them that the concern was that I wanted to make sure this was taken care of before it was leaked to the public. I knew people had the information, so I assumed it would be leaked, so I wanted to make sure they got ahead of it, were my exact words. In my emails that Mr. Klein quoted tonight about me saying, please let me know or hear what Dr. Sedicum's response was, because we have to decide what to do with the information. That was the quote. I can share the emails with anybody. And that wasn't out of malice. That wasn't a threat, which some inferred it as. It was that me personally, I could not sit with this information on my shoulders if I knew that it wasn't, and nothing was going to be done with it. If Dr. Sedicum denied the allegations, if the board, Mr. Klein, decided to do nothing with the information, then I would have to do something with that information. That doesn't mean leak it to Facebook or the public or social media. That meant, from what my solicitor said to do, would be to go to the DA. And in fact, I couldn't even go to the DA. I would have to have a taxpayer take it to the DA because I don't live here. So it was not a threat. Actually, none of this was malice. None of this was to harm Dr. Sedicum personally. If it was, I would have just went to the media myself. If I wanted to cause harm, I could have posted it on our own Facebook page or tweeted it. But I didn't. I actually went the right course of action. So I would love to hear, eventually, you don't have to do it now, what you would have done with the information if it was told to you. My conscience is completely clear on this situation. Although I was targeted tonight, that's okay. I'll take the hit. My low test scores last year were not illegal. My low test scores last year were not against the state constitution. I did the right thing, and it was not because of my union that I did it. I did it because it's the moral and ethically correct thing to do, to bring it to someone's attention. Because if I wouldn't have brought it to your attention, then you'd be sitting up here yelling about the union not sharing the information to you. And I would be blamed for that. If Mr. Klein or others had any questions about my emails that I sent, multiple emails and text messages and phone calls that were unanswered, then you could have responded to me. You could have talked to me face to face like I requested as well. But no, you decided to infer it on your own. You took an email, words in an email, which are often very easily able to be confused, instead of just asking me what my thoughts were on a pretty serious situation. And if you go back to these emails, one of them will tell you how much effort we were trying to put into making sure that Dr. Sedicum was truly the person being accused of this. And my quotes in there will show you that I said it's extremely important for the district and the teachers union that we make sure this is him. Because we would hate for it to come out that this isn't him in the end. So we took effort to make sure we were not going out on a witch hunt, looking through archives and microfiche, which I don't even know if those machines exist anymore, to dig up this dirt. We did look into it deeper just to find out who he was. Make sure it was him. Was it his middle initial? Was it his birth date before this would go any further? That is true. We did that. Unfortunately, when we did that, a lot of other allegations or charges and convictions came up out of that. And I'll just leave you with this. If a union member did indeed leak this to Facebook, that is not a representation of our entire organization. I cannot guarantee what all of my members will do on social media. I did encourage them with an email to all of them to be cautious with what they post on this topic. I did not encourage them to come out on Facebook and add to this dialogue. I actually told them to refrain. So that's all I have to say. And I'd be happy to speak to people personally next time if you choose.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Time for the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Would you like to take a 5-minute break?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We'll re-adjourn in 5 minutes.
Sorry. 5 minutes delay again against the superintendent.
Still got lots of whoppers left. We got a while to go yet.
This is true.
Good, and you? Actually, find somebody who'll take the job.
Administrator. They have no money. I know all about that. I know the whole story. Well, he was
young Miss Lewis' idea. Miss Lewis, she stood up there, a young 13-year-old. She had a great idea.
They both
She said we should go into the schools.
It's like this.
Serve the teachers.
I know.
Okay,
fine. I'll be right back.
Get rid of because those underperforming ones deserve to go to her teachers. So I thought that there was another good point that she brought up too, which is let's go look at what Glenn stopping you.
Just talk about it in the constitution.
I like that.
I think I'm talking about
I'm not saying that, but I thought
The case felony, yes. This is not a Pennsylvania conviction.
there is.
Tampering with it. And I was just I didn't see anything.
The average class size is very
All I got was what he said that. I didn't know he had 2 Bridgeport drivers.
I said, how are the lunch? They said, they're a little crowded. We were fine. We went through everybody's rights. It's not an issue.
I'm at the door.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's okay. I just don't want to like be like creeping in if you were having a personal conversation and want to like, here, I'll just want to sit myself down. Sorry. Yes. I had like 1 minute. Just need to switch, okay? Okay. I know. Okay.
Usually just the guys by themselves.
I'm normally pretty good about keeping it. I know.
It's like, you know, once in a while,
So they were dismissed. Yeah. But listen, okay, he never faced
and someone heard it?
Just left.
Talk fast because I only have this 1 minute.
And you can't really, I guess,
She wrote it about you?
No, but I read the cases. They classified it.
Yeah. Sure. She's got problems. She's too much. She cannot bring you down. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you do. But why doesn't she let him get paid? What does that mean? Okay, well, what do you want me to do? You want Dad and I to have a meeting with the coach? Let me talk to Dad. In the meantime, you have friends and you're a great kid and you're going to worry about finding the problem. Okay?
pretty much killed that bag of all-star mix.
Don't do ours. We don't have a lot of time.
Just have to recognize the job they do, the job they have to do.
All right.
Simple. Recognize what each person has to do.
Okay, everybody, time to resume. Dim the lights like at a theater. You did talk to the other people in the facilities committee.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good.
That's the ordinance favorite teachers. Mr. Birch, he teaches AP literature. Shakespeare. He's Mr. Shakespeare.
Okay, everyone, time to resume the meeting. Dr. Harner, you're up.
Good evening. During the superintendent's report, we have two items. First, Dave Schrader from the Schrader Group is going to present the options for Nidec Elementary School, and then Dr. Lisa Hoffman will be talking about our game plan for developing an alternative program to replace several programs to save resources and as I discussed earlier, put our a few of our furloughed teachers into opportunities in the classroom so they can keep their contract. But first, sir, I'd like to hand it off to Mr. Anderson just for a second.
All right, to all the teachers out there, I am sorry I upset you. Maybe I should have thought better about what I say. I know many of you do work very hard. I know many of you are also very good teachers. And so I should have painted with a much finer brush than I did, and I apologize to you for that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schrader, please.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us. The board and the audience clearly have a lot on their plate this evening. We will give the presentation that we were going to give. We'll just make it a little bit tighter and condensed. So the intent of this is to bring the board up to speed with what the Facilities Committee has seen thus far, and trying to move this project to a point where it at some point can accommodate the 600 students that the building will need to accommodate. The building currently has in the neighborhood of 400 students in it. Those of you who know the building well know that it is missing a music room, it's missing an art room, and unlike POF, it actually has a cafegimatorium is what we call the space. And so it's a space that accommodates all of those needs in one. So we have had quite a few meetings, and we did bring this to the Facilities Committee earlier this month. We had a really great community meeting with about 30 to 40 community members on Tuesday evening, and presented not just the 3 versions that we shared with the Facilities Committee, but one more that came out of a lot of conversation that people have had. So it's our intent tonight to give you a quick overview of those and then to share with you the last option as well. Chris Rice from Boucher and James is here with me as well. So if we have site-related questions, we can go for that. The hope is to be able to just get a very high-level understanding of these 4 concepts and to kind of leave you with that. You have May 3rd as a Facilities Committee to entertain discussions. It'd be nice if on May 10th people could begin to have some decisions about where they'd like to head with the overall site plan. We will then work on a building plan that condenses to a budget that we can all agree to. But the intent here is to try to get a site plan that does generally what we need it to do. So the site, as those of you who know it, the building is up on several screens here. It's the white portion, in the center. The bottom is Penrose, and Erie Avenue goes north-south, at least in this drawing. There's some residences up Erie Avenue. There's, as you all know, the residences in kind of a little bit more of a dense urban environment around this area. There are homes right in front of the property, and then there's a home directly behind the school, and then there's a grass field behind. And while that may look to many like a very buildable site where we can expand easily, this drawing that is in white demonstrates that we have floodplains that cut through the corner of the property on one side and on the other side. Everything in the black lines, for the most part, there is a little cutoff area here that we're working with the neighbor on, but everything here is basically school district property all the way around to the place where you currently have a playing field. So as far as development areas on this plan, when you look at that, in terms of the floodplain areas, which you really cannot build building within, we have a small area for a two-story addition to the structure. So the intent for this project is to expand it so that it can accommodate 600, have the same number of spaces as POF for the same student population, and then add a gymnasium so that you have both a dining area and a gymnasium. So that's the focus of the concept. And just real quickly, this is Licking Creek. That is the one that has the floodplain off this side, and this is Tehicken, and that has a floodplain along this side of the property as well. So there are quite a few boundaries to the site that make it, that start to constrain some of the areas that you can develop. Maybe one last comment. This area is Richland Township on this side of the line, and this area is Borough, everything over here. So the property also is across two different municipalities. Building as it stands, the multi-purpose space is currently here, and then this is a one-story area, and then a one-story area, and all basically one-story area. The concepts you'll see very quickly, and again, I'm just going to show the site plans for the evening, but they generally add either to this side of the structure or to this side of the structure. Adding to this side of the structure starts to really cross the municipal bounds and probably makes the development a little bit more challenging to some extent. So we have four options real quickly. As shared with the facility committee, we have the first three. One was a two-story addition to the left-hand side of the building with the gymnasium behind. We've been calling this option A. And the big questions tonight are where the front door is and where the circulation plans are. And without a very long discussion about circulation, the intent of a building of this size would be to really separate the car loop and the bus loop, because we have stacking for vehicles on these sites now that they didn't have when buildings like this were built. People came to school in buses. So version A builds a new driveway at the back side of the site off of Erie and brings it in just across the bridge. If you were to head out of the borough and across into Richland Township, there's a bridge right across the Licking Creek right there. Right after the bridge, you would take a left into the back of the property and circulate around for buses. The front then creates the beginnings of a car drop-off line, and essentially we think we can stack about 15 to 20, maybe 25 cars to the end of a covered walkway area in that plan. As we've talked about this, Mr. Gottschalk has been very, very attentive to how many cars attend the site, how many buses do, and the focus for right now, he has counted as many as 71 cars dropping off in the morning. Particularly during inclement weather. So stacking becomes very difficult to try to get it all in the front area here. Currently, he has 7 buses come to the site. If the building is built out with 600 students, it'll have approximately 11 buses, and they would fit around that loop. So this works well from a floodplain standpoint, and it has the separation of cars and buses. There is a challenge to how many cars you can stack up before they hit the canopy area. So option A is a concept that separates well and keeps the vehicular traffic on the Penrose side with the buses off of Erie, so there's less traffic on Erie in that case. Just some plans that worked through as we were talking about this. Then there was a discussion about potentially flipping the building by making all of the drop-off and all of the parent pickup area as well as parking come off of Erie. And in this case, there was a 2-story extension to the building that went along the backside in the Richland Township portion of the building, and then the gymnasium was added on the front side of the building in the Quakertown Borough area, with the parent drop-off loop that is currently bus loop staying as bus loop, I should say. So now what would happen is the parents would all drop off and the cars would stack up on the property coming off of Erie Avenue, and Penrose would essentially just be the bus drop-off area. So you can start to see the conversation. The conversation is, do we come off of Erie with the parent drop-off, or do we come off of Penrose? That's essentially the major part of the discussion. Option C, as we get to it, was one more version of the parent drop-off on the backside. However, we created a two-story classroom addition that kind of ran mostly within the Quakertown borough area, and then we added or kind of rebuilt the left-hand side of the building as a gymnasium with a bus drop-off on that side as well. So options B and C essentially are concepts where the parent drop-off all goes along Erie Avenue and loads onto the site from that side of the site and stacks within the property. Option A was the other way. It came off of Penrose, the challenge being the depth that we have to try to stack the cars on the site. So after we've presented these a couple of times, and particularly after we had a series of meetings where some of the community members and neighbors came, we kind of came to the conclusion that we really wanted to minimize development on the Richland Township side if possible, minimize the parent drop-off traffic, which would back up onto Penrose Street. So we're trying to find a way to snake all of that traffic onto the site so that we don't flood your urban streets with cars. We are going to try to cluster the core community components around the main parking and the entry administrative area, and obviously we don't want to have impact on the floodplains or floodways with the building if we can avoid it. It will extend the approval times and it'll be very challenging to get approvals. And after a lot of conversation, there was a desire to try to minimize traffic over the bridge on Erie. What that did was it kind of provoked a concept D. And concept D altered basically version A and brought the bus traffic in on the backside with very, very limited parking on the back. That would probably be early morning cafeteria staff. It would probably be custodial staff and so on that come to the building and are in the site the majority of the day, so that this part of traffic off of Erie Avenue really just sees traffic twice a day, and it's probably 11 buses plus a couple of cars that come in and park there. The issue we had with that long stacking distance off of Penrose Avenue and not getting enough stacking on the site, we had a lot of conversations about potentially utilizing Glenwood. And so in this case, what we're doing is bringing the traffic off of Glenwood, twisting it into the site and creating a turnaround that the cars come back out and onto Glenwood and back out of the site. And then we would just leave a small entry point where the current access is off of Penn Road. As an emergency exit, it would be gated and would only be opened in the case of emergency. And this has that two-story classroom structure on the left-hand side of the site. The gymnasium is tucked into this portion. And I won't get into the real makeup of the building, but it starts to really put itself together pretty well. What this allows for is a stacking of 75 cars before you hit the end of the canopy covered area, and if administration really needs to extend that parking further into the site, there's probably a way to stack as many as 100 cars, and we would have to clarify and verify exactly what the number is. But this solution was a version similar to A that allowed a lot of the building components to be built in a similar manner to A, puts the bus traffic off of Erie Avenue, and puts the car and parent drop-off off of Penrose. So this was the last of the four options. The four options are still on the plate for people to entertain. This is essentially an increased version of option A. And there's a way to make all of these essentially the same price. What we're trying to do is figure out where the front door is, figure out which side the traffic should really come from, and then to start working backwards from there to make sure we get to a budget that everybody agrees to. So I think that explains the four concepts and kind of gives people something to work from this point forward.
Any questions from the board? What we're after is in the next board meeting on May 10th is to give the architect direction. We have a facilities meeting next week where this could be a discussion, further discussion, and then on May 10th to give the architect the direction on where do we start developing. Across the options from what we've been talking about behind the curtain and in our meetings and public meetings is that basically all four of these options are about the same in cost, can be value engineered. This current option with D has, in its picture, has more space to it, has a little bit more dollar value to it, more square footage. But if they're all about the same with all the core facilities, and the objective is to make sure that the quality of the facility is similar, identical in functional areas as Poff Elementary School. Okay?
Just a comment for the full board. I attended the meeting Tuesday night with the Schrader Group and the 30 or so residents. For what it's worth, the public there overwhelmingly supported option D. Their biggest concern was the fact that 11 buses would have to be coming in morning and night, and they felt that was a better use of the side road, Erie Road, rather than 75 to 100 cars every morning and afternoon. So they very much preferred a front entrance to a rear entrance. And again, that's the community input for what it's worth, but you should all take a look at all the options before deciding.
Is there one option that's better for traffic than another?
Well, so option D came out of a lot of that conversation, and the fact that we're able to stack as many cars on the site as we can, meaning we're leaving very few that may end up on Penrose at any point in time. It's the one that allows us to get most traffic onto our site.
I also want to let the board know you should be thinking about the approvability of a plan as well, because you're going to need approvals from the municipalities, and that's a factor you got to consider when you're thinking about which option makes the most sense.
Good point.
Part that discusses some of that I found to be very helpful.
So I do have all of that in a presentation that the administration can send out electronically, and we've added D to that chart.
Thank you very much, sir, for your patience tonight.
Oh, thank you.
The next report is by Dr. Hoffman on our alternative education program. I'd like to say that when we began working on our budget months ago, long before the holiday, we knew we were going to be tight. And so over definitely the last 2 months, 3 months, we've been trying to come up with alternatives to how we deliver services, how we receive our students receive services, and all that, and knowing that where we are excess in staff, with enrollments going down, and for those who weren't in the last board meeting in the audience there, we're expected to go down how many hundred students over the next 5 years? We're about 52, 80 some right now. We're supposed to go down about a little bit over 4,900. And which is basically a whole school. But we're in a good place where we can look and be incredibly creative. Now this has to do with moving teachers and support staff into this function. Which would be in this building, and I'm not going to take your presentation from you. I'm just setting the stage.
Go for it.
But it also has to do with making sure that folks work with us, especially Ryan and his team, as we move people around to save jobs. So we're not furloughing. So with that said, Dr. Hoffman.
Sure. Thank you. So just to give you a brief agenda for what we're going to talk about, I just want to give you some background information, talk a little bit about some of the obstacles that our students are facing right now to successfully complete high school, the proposal that I've come up with for that, our staffing recommendations for the program, some costs and opportunities, and then some additional things that we might need to consider. And then certainly if you have any questions at the end, I'm happy to answer them. So the first thing, just to provide a little bit of background, is that over the years, the district has had varying ways that they've tried to meet the needs of students who aren't successful in the traditional school environment. So we've had, there was a program called Options at one time. We had an in-school alternative. Quest was short-lived, but similar type program. And we also have had Ombudsman as a partner since 2009 as an outside agency providing services to our students in this building right on the other side of that wall. Even though we don't have some of those programs in place right now, the students still exist. They're still here, they still need support, and it is a large concern of mine as well as the rest of the team that we are losing them, and that many of them are not finding their way to successful completion of high school. So that's a little bit of background on the fact that we really need to be thinking about ways that we can program for all of our students here. We're also talking about the end of the agreement. It ends June 30th with Ombudsman, so we will no longer have that program for our students to attend. We have a high number of outplaced students in this district. If you remember, Mrs. Pallone did a presentation on one of the areas for our special education students that was actually noted as an area of concern was the number of students that we outplace out of our district. We also have had increased referrals for behaviors, specifically at the high school, and we've heard a lot of information about that. I have spent some time at the high school over the past couple months, talking to the leadership there, talking to a lot of teachers there, and working with students, and it is a concern that there are students who appear to be having increased behaviors in that building particularly. Truancy remains a concern. I know that we came to you with a proposal of something that we had hoped would be successful for our students at the high school in terms of truancy. At this point, we don't have all of the data back, so I'm not ready to say whether or not that is a successful program, but it still remains a concern for us that students are not coming to school or are coming to school but not engaging in the classroom. So we actually do have students who will come to the building, but they won't go to class, which is a concern. We have a need for some transitional programming for students. This is a big focus area that I've heard specifically from the high school teachers and administration, that we have students who are coming back from placements. So perhaps they've been in a juvenile detention center or another restrictive placement, and when they come back to us, they're going right back into the general population of students. And typically that's not successful for the student or for the students around them. And finally, we have the need to retain students who are otherwise telling us that they no longer want to come to school and they're looking to drop out. So that's just some background information. Many of these are things we've already mentioned, but the obstacles to success or barriers to success for our students are not coming to school, not having a connection with the school or with any adults in the school. Being off track to graduate is a large concern for many students. Sometimes they may become so disengaged by, let's say, 11th grade that they realize that there's no way they're going to graduate with their cohort, so they kind of give up. We have the behavioral concerns, repeated violations of school rules, drug and alcohol violations and concerns for our students, mental health concerns. And another one that is talked about a lot but not talked about in this population is school anxiety and school avoidance. And I do believe that we have a large portion of our students who don't feel comfortable coming to school. And we have many of those students who are in cyber charter schools or who have just poor attendance because they just don't feel comfortable coming into the school building. So that leads to the proposal, which I am very thankful to Dr. Harner and to the board to be able to present to you, which is a district-run, in-house alternative learning academy for our students. So this would be housed in our district office location, which is already outfitted to be a school. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the proposed changes that I would have for that space, but it would be a half-day program, as most alternative AEDY-approved programs are, which is what Ombudsman is, though there is flexibility for a student to be able to attend for the full day if that's needed. Most students that are in that program would still be able to go to the tech school if they're interested. The reason I say most is because if you are expelled from our school, you could still attend this program, but you would not be allowed to attend the tech school. That's just a typical agreement that we have for a student who's expelled. But other students would now be able to still have that flexibility. We would have more flexibility in student placement in that right now the AEDY guidelines are so tight that if a student doesn't meet these very specific criteria, even though we may feel like our general high school is not the best placement, we can't move them. So certainly we would still have guidelines in place for this program. It's not like anybody would just end up there, but we have more flexibility. If we have a student who we really feel like this is a good placement for them, and maybe truancy is their concern, previously they couldn't have gone to ombudsman, but they would be able to come to this program. We would be able to have a transitional approach for students returning to the high school to set them up for success. And I believe that it could meet the need of a variety of different students. So not just a student who's expelled or not just a student who has behavioral concerns, but like I mentioned, some students who really just need a smaller learning environment to be successful. So this is a little hard to see, and I apologize for that, but it is in the information that was shared. So while I want to be very clear that this proposal comes from a student-centered approach, looking for a place to support our students, there is an added benefit, you could say, at this point, which is that it does require staff, and running it on our own instead of the staff that's currently in that building who are not our teachers, we would be utilizing our own teachers for this. So my proposal is a teacher on special assignment. A teacher on special assignment then is already a position that was in the budget that we were looking at potentially putting in another one of the buildings, and so I would propose that that person would be housed over here to kind of run the day-to-day operations of the program. That would also free up a long-term sub position in a building that a potentially a furloughed teacher could take. We would be looking at a regular education teacher and a special education teacher. So those two positions would need to return back into the budget, thus reducing the number of furloughs by 2. It is important to note that the person who fills the special education role does have to have a special education certificate, and that, as we had talked about before, that may mean that people who are in other positions need to shift what they're doing to cover that position, but nevertheless, it is 2 teaching positions. I would be asking for a full-time school counselor, and I know that there was some questions that were brought to my attention about the number of students and do you really need a full-time counselor, and I believe that the answer to that is yes. That person would be responsible for not only doing daily check-ins and building relationships and communications, but also doing some more intense group sessions and working with the students in that way. We'd also be looking at nurse coverage for the program. Now, this program alone really requires about a half-time nurse. We wouldn't need a full-time nurse, but the plan and working with the Pupil Services Department and Mrs. Pallone would be to see if there is a way that we can have the other half of that nurse position saved in the budget as well to cover our non-public schools. So right now, our school nurses leave our buildings to go out and cover the non-public schools. That's just part of how the districts operate, not just our district, but many districts. So what we would be looking at doing is having this nurse serve as the nurse in this program, and then also be able to serve those non-public schools on the other time so that the other district nurses can stay in the buildings, which I think we've heard from a number of people is something that they're interested in. And then we have the cost of curriculum. I added 50 seats, which would be 25 students in the morning, 25 in the afternoon, which I think is a good number for having 4 adults in the building, though certainly we could change that if need be. So that brings the total approximate cost, and this is using rough numbers, it would depend on who the actual people are that go there, to $565,000. So where would we come up with that money? Because right now we're not really in a position to be looking for extra money. Well, we already had $385,000 budgeted for ombudsman, so that's already in the budget. That program is not serving anywhere near 50 students. We have 15 seats, and at the most this year we've had 10 students. Because as we talked to you, they tightened the regulations and we had some different rules in terms of getting students there. In this case, I would also look at asking for the money that we budgeted for FFP, the truancy program, to go to this as well, because I really feel like what we had hoped that program could do could also be served in this capacity. We also already had the money budgeted for the TOSA, so that's not extra money. So if you add those numbers up, it's actually $49,000 extra, not really extra, but money that we could use for any program needs that we have, whether we determine that the number of students is so great that we may need another support, maybe depending on the students who are there, we would need something else, or just if there's renovations that need to be done to that. Ultimately, if we have extra, then that just gets returned to the budget, which is exciting. We also have some opportunities to offset costs. So similar to what we had here with Ombudsman, there were other districts that participated. So Penridge, Palisades, Upper Perk had seats in that program. So we would have the opportunity to hopefully come up with a relationship where other districts could choose to send their students here. The approximate cost for that, or the revenue for us, would be $15,000 a student. So you can see that if we could even sell 12 seats in a year, that would pay for one of the teachers, which is certainly a benefit that we could reach. The other benefit would be returning students from costly replacements. So if we now have a school that's part of our school district, a student could return to it, still be in a restrictive setting, but not as great as an outplacement, and still be considered to be in our school, which is exciting, and less money, less transportation, all of those costs. And also try to return some of those students from charter schools who maybe were hoping to do more of a cyber learning in a smaller setting, and they would now have that opportunity here. And certainly to retain students who may leave for other placements or who we are looking at outplacing somewhere. Additional considerations, I want to be perfectly transparent that the costs don't include some of these things. In terms of technology, they do need computers, so we'd either be looking at trying to repurpose computers that we have somewhere in the district or eventually buying computers for the program if we have money. We are looking at the opportunity to potentially purchase the furniture that's currently in there from the lease tenant if they're interested in selling it to us, or we'd be repurposing furniture, eventually buying furniture as necessary. The physical space is actually in pretty good condition. Mr. Schock and Mr. Harper and I walked the building the other day to just kind of see where we were. There's some stains on the carpets, and there's a section of carpet that probably needs to be replaced, but the structure as a whole doesn't really require any major maintenance. Probably could stand to be cleaned, as I put on here, because I felt pretty strongly that it could stand to be cleaned, and maybe some paint. I think in the future, if we were able to grow the program, there are some additional space back there that I would want to maybe section off or have some smaller group sessions, but that's not something that has to happen now. So that is my proposal on behalf of myself and the team that I have involved over the last couple of weeks as I've been trying to bring people in. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I'd just like to lead off by saying that 4 years ago, over 4 years ago, when I met Dr. Hoffman in the high school where she was assistant principal, I learned about her passion. Not only is this area that she's working on her passion, this is what her dissertation was in for her EDD or PhD at Temple. Janet and several members that are in here have helped put this together, and I think it's one that fits in a need. So we're just not creating something to create something. It definitely fits a need here in our community. Take a lot of pressure off of what goes on in the hallways of the high school, and it has a potential to make revenue for the district, which is always a good thing.
Quick question. Didn't we just recently discuss and approve another organization to lead a program such like this?
That's FFP.
Is that the FFP? Is that
That's the FFP.
Okay, thank you.
And that was only for truancy.
Right.
In the building, it doesn't actually address any of the academic concerns of the students. It just addresses trying to get them to come to school.
Did we enter into a contract with them that we would have to bust or something?
It was a one-year contract.
It's a one-year contract,
And
yes.
it was this year?
Right.
Okay. Then I guess, so by your staffing recommendations, the TOSA staff is already budgeted. It's already there. But you're already recommending that we save a recommended furlough from one regular education teacher, one special ed. Where any of the teachers proposed to be furloughed a special education teacher?
So the way that the furloughs work is that we would be looking at an individual moving from a regular education spot into a special education spot. They might have that certification, which would then allow that regular education spot to open up for one of the teachers who was furloughed. So that, as I said in the beginning, it does involve movement of teachers hopefully voluntarily. I'll tell you that I've received a number of calls already in the past week, or the past couple days since this has gone out, inquiring about it, letting me know that they're interested, that they wanted to talk more about it. So I'm hopeful that there's.
And then we're saving the school counselor. There's a lot of talk about this particular school counselor that everybody seems to love.
That's correct, and it wouldn't necessarily be her that would be in this building.
Her position, at least.
Correct.
So likely her person.
Yes, her as a person.
And then the nurse. I understand it's half-time nurse, but like you said, that other half would be farmed out to other things. So I'm assuming
it would be a full-time. I just wanted to be clear that even though we would retain her as a full-time nurse, the money for only half of her position is attributed to
the nurse that's been, I don't recall the names, forgive me if I don't recall every name that was on the list, I apologize, but that nurse, that particular nurse that was on the list, her position would also be retained?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have 4 out of 8, understand one is, there's discrepancy about the 1, so 4 out of 7, let's say. This program recommends keeping 4 out of those 7.
That's
personally.
correct. And then the TOSA opening, the TOSA position would create a long-term sub opening for one of the other people on the list.
Okay. So, Mr. Wien, your discretion, may I ask you a direct question, yes or no? Yes, sir. It's a yes or no question. I'm not going to ask a question if you choose not to enter into it. Okay. This is the administration, we did not, as a board level, no one came to me and asked me if I had any great ideas. The administration on their own came up with this idea that's in front of us to save 4 of those 7 positions. Is your organization in support of this?
It was in the blog.
Thank you.
It was in your blog.
Dr. Hoffman?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ron, were you done?
Yes.
Okay. Regarding the truancy aspect of this, I know the FFP, if I recall from last year, that they had people available pretty much any time, almost 24/7. Would we be in the same situation to be able to do that, or would we be building towards that?
So not necessarily in that capacity, and I don't want to overspeak because I don't have data in front of me, but I will say that my understanding from the time that I have spent at the high school, so that's the only thing I'm speaking to, is that the students who FFP are working with are in school. So they're in the school. They're just not going to class. So some of the things that we had hoped would be part of the plan in terms of trying to get students to come into the building, they're already there. And of those students who are on the list that FFP are working with, at least 9 of the students have been brought to my attention for a pilot program that we tried the second half of this year at the high school in the building using this model to see if we could get it to work. So they're redundant students. They're being served by this program and also by FFP. So I'm not sure that right now, yeah, sure, it would be great. I'll take another social worker in the program and, maybe another teacher and whatever else we can have. That would all be very helpful. But maybe a behavior specialist, right? We could use whatever, however many people we can have. But I think in reality, the idea is building a community of a strong support network for those students so that when they come into the building, they feel connected and we help them to get on the right path.
And you feel strongly that this is far and away better than what we're doing now?
So far and away better than Ombudsman, I do. I feel, and as Dr. Horner said, it's not only a passion area of mine, I've actually done a tremendous amount of study on this, and it was the topic of my dissertation, so I feel like I can say very strongly that there's a reason why why all of Upper Bucks County is ending their partnership with Ombudsman, and we have to do something to serve all of our students, and this is a population of students that needs our help.
You're going to be able to market it to the other schools?
I am. I'm ready for it.
And full disclosure, in case anybody does a background check, I was one of those kids who came to school but didn't go to class.
Okay.
In case you wonder how it happens.
very well done. I just wanted to say that I really like the idea of this program, and especially that it serves a certain group of kids who may be not getting the attention they need, and also saving jobs, of course. So great.
Thank you.
So great job.
Thank you.
Let's say you're an expert if you have your PhD in this topic.
It's an EDD. I don't want to misreport what I have, but I'm still proud of it. Still doctorate, but.
So question for you, do you think that there would be any difficulties with students transitioning, like not going to the high school and coming here?
So right now we do that already. We have transportation already set up for students en routes because they're coming to this building. They're just coming to a provider that's not us. So I think that
no. Was it on?
Oh.
Maybe I
Sorry.
talk with my hands, so maybe I shut it off.
So I think that the processes are all in place from the student perspective of understanding, how to come here. We probably, in all honesty, need to do a little bit of work on reputation building so that people don't see it as an alternative school that means that everyone there is troubled in some unrepairable way, which sometimes is unfortunately the way that students who need an alternative learning environment are presented to the general public. But I think that it's not something that we can't overcome.
So does this this would be a half-day program, you said, correct?
That's the thinking behind it. 4.5 hours is typically what most alternative education placements like this are. But as I said, if a student were to require a longer day, there would be no reason. We'd have staff there, so we'd be able to make that manageable. And part of the reason why, because I know another question that came up was, why do you need 4 people for 25 kids at a time? We do anticipate that some of the students there would have behaviors, and trying to stick to 10 to 12 students per one adult is going to need to happen.
Yeah, security was a question I actually leaned over and asked Dr. Horner about. Is this a voluntary program for students, or would they be assigned to go to this?
So it could work either way. Typically, right now, students have some type of behavior or reason why they are referred to an alternative school, and they would go through an intake process. And right now, the school administrators need to fill out a form online that comes to my office or to Mrs. Plone's office. We look through the referrals together. We decide whether or not it's a good fit, and we move forward. So that would still be in place. But we may also have students who contact us. I get calls pretty regularly, Dr. Harner knows, from parents who say, my child would like to come back to school, but they don't want to go to the high school. And I say, okay, I don't really have an option for you. So, we could look at that. It would really just be on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Okay.
With no serious objections, I like to move forward with this project, and then working with Ryan and others on his team and our team to put this program together, and if that's successful, then come back and recommend to unfurlough the teachers, how that works out for and our nurse and our counselor. Any objections?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the standing committee reports. First is the policy committee report. Ms. Weed.
I have the boring committee. We met briefly tonight. As an LOL, I forgot about the meeting, so I was quite late, but it was taken care of. So the policy committee looked at revising policy 903 that allows for presentations by member of the public, and we had considered whether allowing PowerPoint presentations and the like. And we've decided not to do that at this point because we already allow public comment, which of course we should, and we do allow the public to bring in copies of handouts or any other information you want to give us. We just think it's going to be too cumbersome to set up computers in here for PowerPoints. So
we're afraid of Chris. Yeah, we're afraid of.
We're afraid of Chris Spears, actually, if he's out there. So policy 903 is going to stay the same, no changes. And we did make one change to comply with the law on policy. Let me get my number here. policy number 806, which is an operation policy. You can obviously look it up if you're interested. But we changed the policy to expand the time when you have to submit new background checks and clearances. This is applicable to volunteers and teachers, and but apparently, as we've learned, not board members. You have to submit new background checks and clearances every 60 months or 5 years is the change. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Weed. Next is the Facilities Committee report. Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, we did have 2 different construction management companies come and present to us, and they both gave really great presentations, and I think captured the essence of what we were looking for. There was one group that did stand out, and so my recommendation from the Facilities Committee would be to move forward with Dewey Construction Management. And that's all for my report.
You finished up quicker than I thought.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm normally longer.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Next is the Finance Committee report. Normally, Dr. Sedekin would give this. Obviously, he's not here. Would anyone else from the Finance Committee like to make any?
I'm part of the Finance Committee, so we were supposed to have a meeting tonight, but that meeting was canceled. What is on the agenda is going to be to discuss voting on if we move forward with the recommendations, I guess, from the the Finance Committee. So I don't have anything really new to share other than that.
Thank you. We kind of put you on the spot there.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Next is the Bucks County Intermediate Unit number 22, Mr. Jackson.
The board of the IU met last Tuesday, the 17th. It was also their celebration of art throughout the district. Every school, they recognize a singular student for an art project. In our case, a current 8th grader named Lainey Mitchell at Strayer drew a picture of, or a painting, I should say, of Blake Lively, which is a name I know, but I'm sorry, I have no idea who that is. So she was in 7th grade. I know she's an actor, but I've never seen her. Anyway, she was in 7th grade when she did. Congratulations to Ms. Mitchell, to Lainey Mitchell for her recognition there. As to what we did that day, I do include the awesome news and a summary of all the items passed for your perusal. Peruse it as you choose.
She's married to Ryan Reynolds, if you wanted to know.
Yes.
Ryan Reynolds, I know. Okay.
Who she's married to.
Ryan
Correct,
Reynolds,
yes. You knew that. Yes, I'm impressed you knew that.
They were co-stars in a sci-fi movie together.
Let's move on.
Let's move on, yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next is the legislative report. Again, Mr. Jackson.
So you're back at me again. The legislative report, highlight just a couple things. Most people don't like to talk too much about laws in Harrisburg and everything, but I do encourage everybody to take a look at the legislative reports. I've asked Alice to continue posting these on the website under the public section for public access to see what Harrisburg is doing with all of our great tax money. The SB 2, that is the school voucher bill, is losing steam. Senator Mensch locally co-sponsored it. He recently removed his sponsorship, hearing from several people around the area, several school districts across the state being not in favor of it at this time. So that bill, its future is uncertain. Property tax reform is always on the docket. Senator Mario Scavello up in the Pocono region came up with a new one recently where he's proposing that everybody's primary residence not be taxed and that all other property taxes maintain, and the offset would be an increase in our income tax. So that's one to watch. That's just a proposal at this point. Shout out to Representative Stats. When we went to see the legislature in action on April 16th. The students, Dr. Harner, and some other staff members were able to sit on the Education Committee meeting, and Representative Stacks had a bill passed. I'm not going to go through exactly what it is because I don't even understand what it's referring to, but shout out to Representative Stacks for getting one of his bills through the committee. Two things I do want to highlight, in my opinion, show both the good and the absurdity of Harrisburg. There is a House bill that's expected to be passed by, it went to full consideration. It was approved by the House, which would require a citizenship test for graduate. So frankly, I'm all in favor of that. I think any graduate should be able to pass the basic citizenship test to become a citizen. That's passed the House. It has to go to the Senate for consideration, but that passed 194-1 in the House. Expect the Senate to pass that as well. Now to the absurd. The sunscreen applications at school bill was also passed, which allows students to apply their own sunscreen without a doctor's assistance. So when you wonder what Harrisburg is doing, consider the fact that there had to have been a law in place prohibiting that before they passed this law allowing it. So just saying.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. On to the Upper Bucks County Technical School, Mr. Achmanowitz.
The Upper Bucks County Technical School Joint Operating Committee met Thursday, April 19th. I'm proud to report this month's Student of the Month is a senior at Quakertown, Jordan Myers. Jordan is enrolled in the Healthcare Careers Program. Jordan was not in attendance because of the Skills USA state competition, unfortunately, but we will get to meet next month. Yesterday, April 25th, our students underwent the NOCCI tests, which are student occupational competency tests. The day also brought about 65 different employers looking for skilled workers. April 28th, there will be a 5K run held by, sponsored by Kiesel Dental, and it's actually going to be in Quakertown to benefit the dental clinic at the Upper Bucks County Technical School. So, Keith, where you at? I was hoping he was going to say he's going. Upper Bucks County Technical School's budget was passed and adopted for the 2018-2019 school year. I'm happy to say the Joint Operating Committee approved a motion to appoint our new Executive Director, Mr. Jeff Sweda, to the Upper Bucks County Technical School's staff, effective as soon as possible. Mr. Sweda has a background in education as well as he is an experienced HVAC technician whose previous principal experience offers us the opportunity to possibly expand our offerings to diesel mechanics and a CDL program. We approved a budget for our students' participation in the 2018 Skills USA National Conference. We revised the 2017-2018 Upper Bucks County Technical School calendar. We approved a motion to move to a 10-hour workday for the staff there at the school, 4 days a week, to conserve energy costs. In an exciting turn of events, we decided to contract a new auditing service for the 2017 through 2020 auditing years. We approved a $10,000 grant from the Gene Haas Foundation. We also are proud to receive about an additional $6,000 to $7,000 in various machines, monetary donations, tools, and lawnmowers. The next Joint Operating Committee board meeting is scheduled for May 17th.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Achmanowitz. All right, we're going to move on to the fiscal agenda portion of the meeting. We'll open by public comment on fiscal items presented for a vote tonight. Was there any public comment regarding the fiscal agenda? No. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand go up there. But please.
Lisa Flommer, Richland Township. As far as the physical goes and you guys approving the budget and everything with the possible furloughs and everything and what we were seeing with the proposals, that still does not answer my question as far as the nursing goes for our schools. If you take your half-day nurse out of Strayer, that still leaves one. So you're still leaving me in a position to where my response to you would not be so nice. So I'm trying to understand where, if you approve this program, which sounds like it could work, but you're still leaving Strayer and Neidig, you know, if you're going to have to redistrict and do all this other stuff to move for closing TV, then you're going to need to move students around. Well, with all of that going on, is that going to add more money for fuel for buses? Is that going to add more time? Is that going to cause more shuffle? Is that going to cause more chaos? Because I can tell you right now, when I went to Strayer and I seen the three shifts of buses, that's chaotic. And I seen a bunch of kids having to sit in a hot room. And my daughter's one of them. You know, is this going to be the same thing with Neidig? I'm not totally understanding everything yet, but that's why, again, I came tonight. So this whole physical thing, as far as understanding where you're going with this, I'm not getting it. So if you can break it down for me.
Part of the challenge, I think, is you get to see the sausage being made just like we do, you know, and it's a process. We're not coming, you know, with everything figured out to the T, down to the last penny, and every, you know, scheduled out. So you get to ride the same wave we're on, because we must do this in public. We have to do our business in public. You're fortunate you get to comment on it, but it's not always pretty. It's not all, you know, like we start off our budget process with the most horrible things known to mankind to sit on this side. And we have to put furlough notices out there, which are horrible, and hope to revoke them before we have to. It's just, we are so constrained by forces outside of these walls. This is the process. You just got to deal with it, and we're doing the best we can.
Okay. No, I in no way, shape,
But it's
or form.
not pretty.
In no way, shape, or form am I trying to criticize.
I don't take it as such.
Please don't.
I don't.
I'm just trying to understand, because I think I'm just so frustrated, and I'm trying to understand, and there's no answers. So your response to me,
name on here, this side of the table.
So I appreciate that. I do. And again, you know, some things, they are what they are, and you just got to roll with them. It's just, you know, we have some wonderful people that give their heart and soul to our children, and I think that we have to find ways to make them and the parents comfortable. I mean, what happens when you start losing 20, 30 families? You start losing money, because then the tax money goes elsewhere when you start adding up these things. And I get it. You guys are dealing with budgets from years ago, and I feel sorry for you. Honestly, I do. My heart goes out to you.
Actually,
you guys have to eat
we can only deal with this year's budget. There's no carryover.
No, but I do appreciate you guys letting me speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Flummer. Okay, moving on to the fiscal agenda. First on the list is to approve, or the business department is requesting approval of the Boucher and James bills list for the month of March 2018 in the amount of $36,987.98. And we're going to do a separate vote on this. Do I have a motion to pay the Boucher and James monthly bills list?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstention.
Thank you.
I didn't say it.
You were abstaining?
No, I said I missed it.
Okay. Okay. So that's 8.
It is.
With 1 abstention. Yeah, 7-1. Dr. Sedgum's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That's right. So there's 8. Yeah. 7-1. That's right.
You good?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. That brings us to the proposed final budget for 2018-2019. The recommended action is approval of the proposed final budget for the fiscal year 2018-2019. This will be a roll call vote. The proposed final budget for fiscal year 2018-19 totals $110,655,204. This amount includes $1,580,000 in capital expenditures and $800,000 in budgetary reserve. The proposed millage rate is 164.39, an increase of 6.62 mils, or 4.2% over the 2017-2018 millage rate of 157.77. The proposed expenditures are $1,428,248 more than the 2017-18 budget, for an increase of 1.3%.
Just so the public knows, this is called a final budget, but it's not really the final adopted budget. That happens in June. It really just is an advertising mechanism.
Okay.
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud.
Sausage.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Are we, oh, never mind.
Do we have a motion on the approval of the proposed final budget for fiscal year 2018-2019?
I'll motion.
Ms. Mitchell, a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Weed, discussion.
Dr. Harner, I have a question about I'm looking at the budgetary presentation in front of us. I'm going to pan down to sheet number 4. Ms. Edwards, tag along, please. I'm looking at the budgeted numbers for 2017-2018, and I'm looking at the projected numbers from 2017-2018. Projected revenues are about even, 105 million ballpark. Proposed expenditures were about 108 and 2/3. Projected is down at 104.5. We made that happen with an Act 1 index last year. So clearly we're doing some good things to bring our costs down. We know we're closing some schools and furloughing some teachers. Thanks to the administration's hard and daunted effort, we've reduced that number even further. This budget calls for a 4.2% increase. Why should we give you a 4.2% increase now, as opposed to forcing Act 1 again, if it's typical for us to come in under budget in the future?
Every year we've been able to come under budget, principally because each year we've been able to go after one system after another system to get into it and see how we spend and how we can be more efficient. Example, transportation. The first year we saved $600,000 a year going to the hub system. Last year, when we weren't not able to refinance our debt and index was the limit, then the only option to balance the budget or to go after using fund balance, a significant amount of fund balance to go after to balance the budget. With the board made a decision to close 2 schools. Closing the 2 schools has everything to do with how we have basically closed most of the structural deficit in our budget. So going forward, unless something that we can't control happens, we should be in a very good place moving forward. And even though we have declining enrollments, probably I don't have a crystal ball, is retaining the staff. So then the class sizes come down from where they are projected to be next year over the next couple of years, and we have the projections for all that. So it's by doing the work over the last couple of years of getting the structural deficit under control, and we did not have to furlough anyone last year. We took that out of retirements. I'm praying to God that in the next 2 months, and that's why I need 4.2%, that we can come up. It's not me. It's these guys working really hard. And I would tell you, Lynn Rounson, who's in the audience, got us to this number by going in there and checking out all the line items and getting our number is about as accurate as it can get. So with all that said, we've done a good job. The team's done a good job of that. And I'm asking for 6 more weeks, 7 more weeks, because a lot can happen. You don't know what's going to pass down in Harrisburg. You know, they could eliminate property taxes for all we know. And then we would really need a huge crystal ball. So give me the time, give us the time, and that's why I believe I'm hoping Mr. Akmanowicz, when he approved the 4.2, he directed me along with several board members. I think Ms. Mitchell said that too, and others saying get it down to 2.8, which is indexed the best you can if you can. But I want to recommend a number that we don't have to do anything else that would be draconian or perceived to be draconian to create deficiencies.
Then a direct response to Mr. Akmanowicz, who's been called out there then. No, I'm sorry, yeah. What's to present us now from asking for 2.8? What's the rationale for not doing it right today? I'm asking Mr. Akmanowicz.
We're doing the work behind the scenes.
Were you asking me if I'd vote on the 2.8 increase today?
No, I don't think this.
Well, the proposal on the table is 4.2. You know, I'm assuming. You know, I don't wish to assume, but I will assume that there are some members of this board who will vote no to that proposal. Okay. Now, you and I think, both want to end up at 2.8.
I would agree.
Okay.
And that, excuse me for putting you out there, that's what you just said, and I need the time. I just like to have the time. Like I asked for the last meeting for the time to work the furlough piece, because I wanted to make sure that we could balance the budget.
Right. I remember a community member not too long ago wrote an email to all of us and said that there's these numbers floated around about us, this percentage or that percentage. The poor community is being held up in the wind as we sit up here not telling them what our tax increase is going to be. The question is, what's to stop us from doing it now? I understand Dr. Harner's position, but previous boards have said, well, you know, 2.8 is where we're going to stick. We've given him some liberties. He's brought that budget down. I'm questioning why not reject the motion on the table and send a new motion to the table at 2.8.
I think you need to think through, like we mentioned before, keeping our options on the table and then also looking at the risk of not doing so. I really like that in the budget proposed that it tells the amount in dollars for the average taxpayer. So at a 4.2% increase, it would be $158. So my guess is that the difference between 2.8 and 4.2 would be something in the ballpark of $20 or $30 difference per taxpayer, which is a relatively small amount. Now, granted, obviously there are people out there with large amounts of land, and that impacts them greater. But the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, if we choose not to leave that wiggle room, what is the impact on our district?
Well, I think the other important thing is that last week, or 2 weeks ago, when you voted to furlough, you used the analogy that I used the last time, saying, well, we're giving them the option. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. And this week, we want to put a line in the sand and not give them that same option, because it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Like we talk about quite frequently, a lot of the stuff we do procedurally means nothing, because we don't know, quite honestly, what we don't know yet, right? Which is going to be what the revenue is. Zach, am I correct on that?
What's that? Sorry.
Do we know what the revenue is going to be? I mean, don't we find that out in May?
Our final assessments next month.
So we still don't. We still don't know what that means. So we still don't even have the final numbers. So what?
So Dr. Harner, in other words, if we say we'll give you 10% now, it somehow makes the math easier, or are there, because this is my third budget, it's so confusing. By us not, by us not forcing our desired 2.8% now, that still gives you something that you wouldn't have? I guess
it is time to work through the things behind the curtain on our team to get us down to as low as we can. The objective is to get it down to 2.8. That's the guidance most, if not all of you, have asked me to do. But right. I brought you a budget in January. There's what was the maximum amount that what we exactly needed at the time of the January budget. And I'm asking to keep that flexibility and just like, again, we're just like the furloughs, give me the flexibility and time.
Yeah, the subtle difference between the furloughs is there's a mandated date by which you must. Correct. Then there's no mandate by how the heck we have to do this budget.
Well, yes, there is. You got to have proof in January.
Dates, but there's no mandate to the levels. So I'm just saying there's a slight difference. We had to do the furloughs because you have to give 60 days notice. So that's a different issue, and it's neither here nor there. I'm just let me try to ask this a different way.
There was a mandate, though, right?
There's no mandate for percentages.
No. What I'm saying is the mandate was back in January, correct?
For what? Anyway, let me just try to.
Act 1 index.
Yes, sir.
There was a resolution that could have been passed to limit us to Act 1. Correct. That failed, therefore there is no limit.
Right.
So I just want to say that.
Well, there's a limit.
Dr. Harner.
Yes, sir.
Exceptions. Correct. We're limited to the maximum exceptions.
Yes, sir.
So by not forcing your hand at this stage, it keeps your staff busy with things that you think are more valuable to try to find that money. If we forced your hand at this
we
stage,
can retain our
you
staff.
have to scurry and you have to do all kinds of things to try to meet that budget now, even though I'm just trying to understand, because in my head, if I knew where I was heading, I don't know that I would.
I think as you have a lot of people looking at you and looking at me as I'm talking, this community wants you to do the optimal decision. The optimal decision right now is to give the administration the flexibility to move forward, and I'm asking for that flexibility of the 4.2. And I know I can get it under 4.2, but I don't know what that number is. So give me that, what we had before, and we'll come back and have the conversations about finance. We've got another finance meeting in May. We have 2 more board meetings in May, and then we bring this back in June.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of discussions. Where are you at? And then we'll give it to you and do the best we can.
So do we even have to vote on this today?
Yes, sir.
The motion was made. There's a motion on the table.
For 4.2, sir. Please do it.
Well, that's only that you can place the proposed budget and advertise it. You can still, up till June, reduce the budget. Can't increase it over that, but you can reduce it.
Okay. So that sounds like it's the end of the discussion. Sounds like it's the end of the discussion now, so there's a roll call vote. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Anderson.
I think I'll say yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Kern.
I'll give you what you want. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Akmanowitz.
Yes.
Ms. Weed.
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. McCucci.
Yes.
President Klein.
No.
Motion passed 7-1.
Okay. Moving on to the fiscal consent agenda. On the fiscal consent agenda, the Business Services Department is requesting approval of the bills list for the month of March in the amount of $8,203,988.33. The Business Services Department is requesting approval of the March 2018 Treasurer's Report. The Business Services Department is requesting that the Board of School Directors approve, pending approval from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the food service contract with Chartwell's Dining Services as the FSMC effective July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019 with the option of annual renewals. The Business Services Department requests approvals of the contract with the Let's Bounce Around Rentals, LLC, for the 6th grade center in the amount of $652.50. The Business Services Department requests approval of the contract with the Lehigh University for the 2019 junior prom with a deposit of $2,500. The Technology Department is requesting approval of the disposition of obsolete technology equipment with Sycamore International. The value given for the equipment is $8,747.50. Do I have a motion to approve the fiscal consent agenda items as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Jackson? Second. Ms. Mitchell? Discussions?
Question about Chartwell's. Not that I'm disappointed at the recommendation. I see that there was some kind of review team committee that made evaluations, but I don't see a figure associated. I don't see any breakdown of what the choices were, what costs were. I'm assuming they were budgetarily friendly as well as darn good for our school.
Mr. Shuck, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, PDE requires the district to put together a committee to review the food service proposals. That committee was comprised of myself, Ms. Lynn Rounson, David Finnerty, the high school principal, and Mr. Klein. We reviewed every proposal. PDE actually outlines the different categories you have to review, and I can list them. It's cost, service capability, financial conditions, accounting and reporting, personnel management, experience and references, promotion of program, involvements of students and staff. So we went through all of those. They give you your rating system, and Chartwell's was the #1 company, I believe, in every single one of our rating sheets, because we do have to rate them independently of each other.
I didn't hear taste on that list.
Taste is not part of it, unfortunately. We did not get to eat anything.
They do sell Pop-Tarts.
Never living it down. Never.
Will not live that
And
down.
to answer the financial piece, yes, they were very competitive with their numbers and their guaranteed profit.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, next is public comment on the facilities consent agenda. Anybody have any comment on the facilities consent agenda? I'll take that as a no. Moving on. The Facilities Department requests approval of the KPN contract with S.J. Thomas Company, Inc. for the restoration of the Richland Elementary School bathrooms in the amount of $297,878.72. Do I have a motion to approve the facilities consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson?
I second.
Mr. McCucci? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? I meant to say aye, I forgot. Motion passes. It is. Motion passes unanimously. Next is public comment on the human resources items presented for a vote. Any comment on the human resources items?
I would like to. Can we remove professional staff from the?
Pull that from the vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the human resources consent agenda is the administration staff, 2017-18 unit pay, support staff, substitute aides, and the one item that Mr. Rachmanowitz is pulling. So, discussion?
Question regarding administration staff. See that Mr. Kimball, I suppose, has decided to seek employment elsewhere. My assumption. Is this a staff position that will be refilled?
For Mr. Kimball, one of the discussions next month, since we had a lot of heavy things, this board meeting did not put it up, is to go review the QCA recommendations with the board in public. And so we have, one of the recommendations is to go with a TOSA versus an assistant principal, and this is on top of that. So this is all kind of, has to be a separate discussion. So we were talking about the future, we're talking about next month. But it's my understanding that Stephen Kimball is going to go to law school next year. That's my understanding.
We'll have to talk him out of that, Jeff, right? We'll work on that.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. I'm sorry.
Aye.
Excuse me. Do I have a motion to accept the Human Resource Consent Agenda?
I'll motion.
With the
Ms.
removal
Mitchell?
of B, right?
Yeah, with the
Yes.
removal of B.
Yeah.
A second.
Mr. Akmanowitz seconded. Now may I ask for all those in favor to say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, the professional staff item that Mr. Akmanowitz asked to be pulled. Mr. Akmanowitz?
I would, I wanted it pulled because I didn't want to vote yes on it. So,
Should we separate even out some of these in here as well?
well, the demotions and the tenure, or excuse me, forgive me, the leaves and the tenure, obviously aren't relevant
Right.
to my conversation. But these demotions that were included in the original furlough, well, planned to be. I didn't vote for it 2 weeks ago. I'm not voting for it now. So I have to.
I would suggest you pull the tenure vote because obviously that's not controversial.
Mm-hmm. The leaves as
And
well.
the leaves, we can pull that.
Should we just do?
I would just make a motion to approve items 1 and 2
Okay.
on the professional staff consent agenda.
I'll motion to vote on numbers 1 and 2 on the human resources consent agenda.
And 4? Do we have to approve that? Of course, it's on here. So, if Caitlin.
Well,
I wasn't sure what 4 related to. So
A suspension. Temporary employee position eliminated.
Oh, that was the one right under it. I
which
think.
position is it?
Right? Is this? So,
should we do-
can we take a vote on the first two and then talk about the next?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, I would motion, that we'd vote on the first 2 as, like
Second.
Keith said, please. Second.
Yeah, the motion was already made. You seconded it.
All right.
E second, yeah.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
So just to be clear, were these factored in last? These are in addition to last week's demotions and furloughs?
Last week, the board didn't vote on any demotions. It was just the furloughs. The additional furlough on here was the one that we had discussed last time. It was on the agenda, but because that motion was a tabled motion from the prior month, it didn't actually get voted on. So that's why that is on here.
That was just an addition. I just want to make sure we'll just keep going down. Let's vote.
Okay. So do I have a motion to vote on numbers 3 and 4 of the professional staff?
Can we?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jackson?
I don't know.
Mr.
I don't think
Kern?
I understand number 4.
I
so-
think you can we
Discussion?
roll call? Can we make that a roll call vote too?
Certainly can, and you should.
Yeah, please do.
This will be a roll call vote. Discussion?
Can we talk a little bit about, I mean, I know it's late, maybe that's why I'm just not connecting, not firing up here, but this number 4, so there's a position that is being eliminated due to redistricting?
No.
that-
Nancy Ann, would you care to address that? Or, I'm sorry, Mr. Shuck. It's my understanding it has to do with the
it's due to
grievance.
the closure of the buildings.
Okay.
So this is.
So it's a furlough.
This was the.
Yeah,
this-
if you
this
if
was
you
the
could
main-
refer to the executive content, it has a little more explanation as well.
Oh, okay.
So this was the discussion we had the last time. So the last vote we had, we took the first motion off the table. We voted on that. We're missing his name.
Okay, got it,
His name's back on.
got it.
Do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've had the motion and the second, and this will be a roll call vote. Madam Secretary?
Mr. McCucci?
No.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
I'm getting all mixed up. Okay, Ms. Weed?
No.
Ms. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Akmanowitz?
No.
President Klein?
Yes. So we have a 4-4 tie. The motion fails. Okay. Moving on. Public comment on the Office of Teaching and Learning items presented for a vote. Any public comment? Okay. The Office of Teaching and Learning consent agenda. Motion to approve planned course statement for the 2018-19 as presented, and this is for the Movement of Athletics course.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Looks like fun.
It does.
Does look fun. Can we take this class?
If you want. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Public comment on policies and program items presented for a vote tonight. Okay. Approved conference at Pennsylvania Positive Behavior Support Network Implementers Forum. Actually, is this a separate? No. Next is to approve confidential waiver agreement for student number 22132. Next is to approve confidential waiver agreement for student number 21981. Do I have a motion to approve the policy and programs consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Akmanowitz. Discussion. No discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, information items.
None.
Pardon? None. All right, communication, there's none. Okay. Board comment, is there any new business from any of the board members? Okay, that brings us to the last general public comment. Is there any public comment? There was a person in the back there that raised her hand first. Yes, please.
Good evening, Melissa Tomlinson, Quakertown Borough. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I just needed to get a comment off my chest that came up earlier, and again, attacking the teachers in the district about test scores and going to judge someone based on their test scores. And I just needed to share that my son, he's in 6th grade, stinks at taking the PSSAs. And last year he got basic and below basic. The beginning of this year, I think below basic was in math. At the beginning of this year in 6th grade center, I got a letter saying he got approved for extra math support. He would need to be taken out of his related arts classes to get this math support. I said absolutely not, because my son's future is in his related arts. I just need to tell the individual who made the rude comment about test scores that my son has earned honor roll for the 1st and 2nd marking period at the 6th grade center. 3rd marking period, he got 6 A's, 2 B's, and 1 C that he got a 79% and missed honor roll. He's gotten an A every marking period in math, and he was one of the individuals at the TSA competition as a 6th grader who just placed 1st place in two of his events and 3rd in his other. So, the test scores don't mean a whole lot. Our teachers are teaching that entire student, not that stupid test. So I tell my kids every day when they go to take the PSSAs, do your best on the stupid test. Paper comes in the mail, I don't show it to them, it means nothing. So please, don't put so much effort on that test. It doesn't mean anything. It does not define my child. He'll be a very successful individual, regardless of what those PSSAs say about him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Katie Robbins, 2nd grade, Paff Elementary School. I've been in the district 13 years, and I did speak a few weeks ago. I speak best from my heart. It's not always the most eloquent, nor is it the best prepared. However, that's just how I speak, because I can't speak in any other manner other than how I feel, because I'm very passionate. And from a quote from T.S. Eliot, I think resonates so much right now with me is, and I do actually have to read this verbatim, sorry. I get a little nervous in these big crowds. I'm used to 7- and 8-year-olds all day long. It is obvious that we can no more explain a passion to a person who has never experienced it than we can explain light to the blind. And I think there's a really big disconnect between all of us. Because I've never been a lawyer. I'm sorry, I don't know what any of you else do for your professions. I've never been a doctor. I've never been a nurse. I've been a waitress. I've scrubbed bathrooms. And I have worked at a mall going through college. But passion resonates within your soul. It's what you do. It's who you are. It's life. It's how you touch others. And I'm going to use this word, and I probably shouldn't, but it's disgusting. The name calling, the bullying. If these were my 2nd graders right now, I would be tears in front of them, and it would not be accepted. And I love my students, and each of them are important. And every single educator in this district, I'm telling you, I chose Quakertown. I had other offers. I chose Quakertown because it's an incredible community of people and individuals and passion. And this has been going on for as long as I can remember. And I don't know any of you individually, so it's not an attack, but thank goodness for how I feel. 4 individuals are fighting for us and for our students, and each of you are working tremendously hard, and I do appreciate all of your time. And I might not agree with you, some of you, but I know you're giving your time. But we need to work this out. This is ridiculous. And after that gentleman spoke, not another word should have been uttered. Nothing. Dr. Hoffman, thank you for devising a plan to save some of our teachers. That must have taken you hours. Dr. Harner, thank you for your support in it as well. We're humans. We're full of passion. And passion can have anger, and passion can have love, and passion can have hurt. We need to heal. We need to vote for students. We need to vote for our community. And you know what? I will say one thing before I end. We didn't want to not give an hour of our time, because we give more than an hour. I've gone to taekwondos. I've gone to a gymnastics meet where I sat through 4 hours and my student only had one performance in that hour. I've studied my new curriculum at home for hours when my 2-year-old goes to sleep and she still doesn't sleep through the night. We give our time. So to ask for another hour from us is almost like an insult. Because if you think a teacher enters that building and leaves, and they don't think a thing about their students or study their curriculum or read the latest research or study psychology to how to meet that child that needs us, then you're wrong. Every profession deserves to be respected, because unless you've done that profession, it's not fair to judge nor speak to it. And again, I do thank all of you for your time.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that while I haven't walked in your shoes, and I agree, Pat, I have the same passion that you have for your job, for my job, and I really love that. I was raised by a teacher, and so there was plenty of nights where I would try to talk to my mom as she was grading papers, aimlessly, stacks of them. I actually learned how to grade papers and would do it with her. So I know the work that goes in after hours, and you don't punch a clock. I trust me, I was raised by one. So
I was raised by 2.
I was raised by a teacher too, and that was very well said.
Mr. Santinello?
My name is Joe Santinello. I'm a resident of Richland Township. I am also a music teacher in our district for 9 years. I am a union thug. I am a member of the opposition forces, although I do not have my decoder ring with me here this evening. I'm also a patient of Dr. Sedicum, who treated me awesome. Had an awesome experience with plantar fasciitis this summer. And I even went home to my parents and said, "Man, I met the coolest doctor. This guy's so smart. Love him." And he helped fix my foot. I believe what occurred in the district over the last couple of days was a massive failure of a system. Nobody's at fault here. There probably should have been something in place to avoid this situation. I would definitely consider it a system failure. And it's really unfortunate for Dr. Sedicum. It's unfortunate for all of us. I just question what some individuals would have liked us to do with the information that was presented to us as a result of that system failure. And I ask that if there was a similar system failure, of course, when I was hired here, I went through extensive background checks, and every part of my history was scrubbed and looked at. Well, let's say there was a system failure. Somehow, I managed to get through the system, and someone brought information to one of you about me. One of your teachers, Mr. Santinello, he has a felony conviction. He was 18, and he suffers from anxiety, which I do, but he has a felony. I question what any members of the board would have done with that information at that time. And it sounds like we're being accused of doing some kind of nefarious act when someone presented us with information that is a serious moral and ethical problem for our school district. And so I think it was very, very unfair. To be honest, I kind of thought we might come here and somebody would actually thank the teachers for bringing to the appropriate people really important information. Certainly didn't get a thank you. I think we were insulted and demeaned, and I hope that an apology will come at some point. I don't know that anyone up here would have done anything differently when presented with that information. I just want to also say, Mr. Weand and all the teachers out there are fantastic, and they are saving this school district money with the amount of work they do. I've been here for 9 years. I've probably worked here for 18 years. Because I do 60 hours a week, every week. I do the job of 2 to 2.5 probably people. And I work all summer long. My marching band stipend is approximately $4,000. And I work approximately 375 hours with the marching band. So if you do the math, it's about less than $10 an hour. And I think our marching band brings us significant positive PR and a great, great experience for children and families. It's just a small example. But to suggest that somehow, you know, we need to take a pay cut I mean, right now we're offering you the bargain of the century. Every day, every week, every year. I do hope you'll reconsider your statements about the way that we handled the situation as it was dumped on us, and I thank you for your time.
Can I ask for a favor? That wasn't the sentiment of the whole board. So as it sits right now, it would probably be divided half and half, and it'd fail a motion to. So, you know, we're empathetic towards that. So it's not I don't want it to be a board issue because it's certain board members, but it's not a board issue. I agree 100% with you. You shouldn't have been. You guys executed. Information was given to you in what I would term the proper fashion, as it should have been handled. And I don't blame you guys for having that information, quite honestly. So I absolutely appreciate that it was brought forth, you know, and we'll let the courts decide what happens next. So, thank you.
Mr. Bartholomew.
My name is Vic Bartholomew, and I live in Milford Township. I know what it's like to be furloughed. I worked at a machine shop for Amatec US Gauge for over 34 years. And working there, I went through layoffs. And when you work in the real world, which I worked where I worked my whole life, when that company decided they didn't make the profit margin that quarter, or they wanted to lay people off in the holidays, that's just what they did, and you had no choice. But I feel, and I don't like to see anybody get laid off, but the teachers, and I have nothing against teachers, I have a lot of respect for what they do. What you do, and I know you work hard, this is like a magic kingdom compared to real world. I don't think that the teachers should be immune to any more of the stress and pressure than what the taxpayers have to put up with for whether or not you're going to have a job from 1 month or 1 year to the next. And they put in just as many hours as any teacher. I know families that both mom and dad work, and they're working 6 days a week just trying to make ends meet. So when you lived here, I lived here my whole life, and we're always paying higher taxes. And now, the majority of the people that I know in my development, 16 out of the 18 houses there, we don't have any children here. So we have no skin in the game at all. Somewhere, when you close buildings and what you're doing, that something has to be cut. Now, it's a shame it's a few teachers, but maybe it sounds cold-hearted, but I grew up in that world. And if that's a sacrifice you have to make for the benefit of the whole, then so be it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay, moving on. Dates for board members.
I'm married.
That wasn't an offer, Mr. Achmanowitz.
I'm married. Thank you.
Thursday, May 3rd is the Facilities Committee meeting here at the DSC Community Room A. Thursday, May 10th at 6 p.m. is the Education Curriculum meeting, Community Room A. And at 7 is the work session here in the Community Room. Thursday, May 24th at 5:45 p.m., the Policy Committee meets, Conference Room 3. At 6 p.m., the Finance Committee meeting is in Community Room A, and at 7, the regular voting meeting here in the Community Room.
Reminder about the legislative breakfast tomorrow. I know I will be there. I'm not sure if anybody else is going to make it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Yes. Second by Ms. Mitchell. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.